what I will advance in my argument is that if somebody is not getting rejection in this endeavor, then he's not working. You know, so long as you are trying to publish and you are submitting work to academic journals, you are going to get rejection. And most of the time, people have conversation around this that somehow you can avoid getting rejected. I would say no, you can mitigate the risk of getting rejected. That rejection is very, very difficult to avoid, and we will see it in this presentation. So this is one of the challenges that many scholars in emerging economies face, that often they submit your work to journals and the work gets knocked back, and then they, for one reason or the other, become disincentivized and then opt out of the system altogether. And I showed you yesterday my outline of the profile. So what I want to do, how we can mitigate rejection, why people get rejected. And from yesterday's session, and I think David highlighted that, and I also touched on some of these, that publishing now is very, very important. If you want visibility in academia, if you want visibility in this industry, publishing is one way of doing that. If you go to your university library, you look at academic journals, see people that have published, you see their names there, and somehow it's very good for them. And if you look at the number of journal hosting sites, whether it's Web of Science, whether it's Scopus, you also have your profile index there if you publish in a leading academic journal. And also Google Scholar, Scopus, these are all areas that if you're publishing in an academic journal, you become easily discoverable in this domain. Also in academic job setting, the job demand now, and I remember when I finished my PhD, you could get an academic job in leading universities without application. Now that is very much not the case. And also in addition to that, maybe you're interested in consultancy. If you publish a particular topic, and maybe you build a volume of research in that area, you often get invited by companies to come and talk to them about the topic. Or sometimes companies invite you to come and sit on their board, largely because of the work that you have published on. So this is also a way that we can also enhance our visibility. So in the light of these benefits, we come to some of the challenges. So if you look at academic publication, for instance, if you look at sub-Saharan African countries, I'm afraid we are not doing well. We are doing very, very bad, I must say. And because often you see, and I'm sure if I do a survey in this room, many of you might have published in some good journals, but I think majority tend to publish in journals that are not indexed in either Scopus or Web of Science. And that means that our overall productivity in terms of scientific publication is increasing, but not to any significant degree. So if you look at Africa, we have about 1 billion plus people, and we're only accounting for around 1.4, 1.5 of the world's scientific publication. Why is that the case? It's because we've had, maybe for historical reasons, many of our institutions have maybe focused more on teaching rather than maybe on research. Or it could be that we have a situation that many of our academics don't try hard enough to try to publish in an academic journal, or maybe our politicians somehow are not developing resources or attention to scientific knowledge development activities. And as a result, we have insufficient research that are emerging in Africa. And these also feed into policy decision making, this feed into development agenda, and that means that often our decisions are maybe not well grounded in terms of creating conditions for development. So how do we produce high quality research in the light of this? And this is where we come in. And when I talk to so many junior colleagues, senior colleagues in Africa, many are doing lots of research. They submit it to journal, and as soon as the work is rejected once, they check out of the system. So rejection in general, there's somehow a mystery. Some people think it's a mystery, but what I'm trying to convey here with this image is that if you are trying to publish at any stage, you can trip over, and I'll go through some of this later on, but ultimately there's no shortcut. It requires a lot and lot of work, a lot of dedication. And that means that you can't just work maybe 1 day a month for research, and then the rest of the month for your other activity. This is something you need to be doing consistently. And many academics, many working academics will tell you that you need to be writing around 500 words a day if you are a researcher. And that means that whatever idea you have, whatever paper you are thinking about, you need to be writing around 500 words on that every day. And over time, you build a pipeline. You build a pipeline that makes you more resilient towards rejection. So my agenda today is that we have to stay strong if we want to be successful in this endeavor. There's this concept called the dark syndrome, which many of you that maybe you visit your local lake or river, or you see a ducks, they are swimming, they are gliding on top of the river, and you think, oh, this is very easy, you know? You see them, you don't see any movement, very little movement, and you're moving ahead. But have you bothered to look underneath the water and see how much effort is going into it? How they are paddling away, working consistently to try to get ahead. And this is something that you get from a lot of senior academics. Often they are not telling you the rejection, the volume of rejections that they are getting. All that you're seeing, you look at somebody's profile, all that you're seeing is that they are recently accepted papers. Say, wow, this guy is doing very well. He's publishing that journal, he's publishing that journal. He's a very world-class academic. But have you counted their rejection? That is often hidden. You don't see the rejection. I think if I tell you the number of rejections I've had this year alone, you'll be shocked. But I had multiple, many rejections this year. Although I published a lot of papers this year, but I've also had many, many rejections. I've had papers that have been rejected more than 6 times this year. Just one paper rejected. If it's rejected, I go there, it's rejected again. Often doesn't mean that maybe I have not paid enough attention. Sometimes it just means that maybe the audience, I'm just reaching out to the wrong audience, and maybe I need to regroup. But underneath it all, if you want to mitigate the rejection, quite a lot. And I think we touch on this with this general writing system, so I'm not going to go through it. But rejection, and it's something that they touch on yesterday, but it's the general outline in terms of the publication process. And wherever stage you happen to be, rejection is possible. So if you submit at the first stage, and for a lot of leading journals, they will reject around half of all first submissions. So after you submit, you see about 50% of all these submissions automatically is rejected. So what that means is that if the editor spot any issue in relation to your introduction, your abstract, I'm afraid you're going down the rejection route. Or if they spot some editor who pay greater attention to grammar language scale. If they see a lot of errors in document, they say this guy is very sloppy. And therefore, they'll just kill the paper. It doesn't matter how innovative your ideas are. So after your first submission, so most of the time, after you submit for a lot of journals, sometimes you submit within a day, or sometimes within 24 hours, sometimes 12 hours after you submit the paper, you get an email back that I'm afraid your paper has been rejected. And if you receive one of those, you're not alone. There's lots and lots of other people that are getting the same thing. There's lots of senior people that are also getting the same rejection. And sometimes you're very lucky, you've done a very good job, the journal has given you an opportunity, they've sent your paper to review, and once it goes into review, it comes back, editor that can then decide to reject. So a lot of rejections occur at the stages where first you submit, and the editor sends it for review, and it comes back, and then they reject the paper because the reviewers are raising concerns about your approach. Other times, you get a revision, and then the editor says, okay, you go back, and the reviewers are saying, I want more changes to be done. You do the changes, it goes back, and the paper is rejected. Or sometimes you do the changes, and then the editor comes back to you again, the reviewers still have concern. By that time, you spent 2 years working on the paper. And then a few months down the line, it still comes back as being rejected. So what I'm saying is that even if you get R&R, which is revise and resubmit, whether you are in the second round, the third round, or the fourth round, your paper can still be rejected. And what that means is that if you get R&R, and I know some advice on some YouTube pages say, well, if you get an R&R, you should celebrate. I would say if you get R&R, it means that's when the hard work begins. That's where you say, okay, now I've got a roadmap. Someone has given me a roadmap of what needs to be done. And therefore, I need to make sure everything that you're asking me is done properly, not halfway. If you do it halfway, reviewers will see that. And sometimes you've gone through, you've done all the changes they are asking you, and almost all journals also require you to send a response letter. You have to explain to the reviewers how you've gone about doing making the changes. And some of us, sometimes we are sloppy. We don't write a very detailed response letter. If you don't write detailed response letter, sometimes the reviewer can take an offense. So, well, I've spent so much time writing this. You made this change. You didn't make that change, but you're not explaining to me why you did not make that change. And then the reviewer will say, this person is not listening to me, so I'm going to recommend rejection. So it's not just the manuscript that you need to pay considerable attention to addressing all the issue, also the response letter. I've had papers that sometimes our response letter is about 25 pages because you have to be explained to the reviewers, okay, you said I should do this. I think this point you're saying is a very good point. I made this change. I couldn't do this because maybe I don't have access to a particular data set. And I remember sometimes we did a paper for one of the history journals, and we had the company that has closed down decades ago, and we have reviewers that is saying, oh, you should go and do interviews. And we could not find people, that worked in the company before. So it's not that we didn't do what the reviewers were asking, and we just put a very detailed explanation of the different steps that we took to try and find people that work for the company, and we still were not able to find people. And we managed to get the paper accepted because the reviewer accepted our premise for not making the changes that they were recommending. So whatever changes that you're being asked to do, I would say you should try to do it, but sometimes
within the constraints of your data, you're not able to address a particular issue. So this very much exemplifies the whole review process. If you're very lucky, you will get to the end of having your paper accepted, because you have people that are very, very strong. And sometimes, you have developed your paper and maybe you build on David has done a paper and you build on that, or any other world leading scholar has done a work and you are replicating that, or you are building on that particular work. Sometimes the editor might approach that person to be one of the reviewers, and you will not know. But the person you said you built your work on, their work is one of the reviewers, and he's standing in front and is waiting for you and has a lot of criticism of your work. And sometimes maybe the person you build your work on has a more favorable view that might sway the editor to say, okay, maybe you are onto something here. And therefore, the editor takes a more developmental approach to help you get your work to the acceptance level. But depending on the journal, and this is something that I said before, if you're looking at many of the world leading journals, sometimes you have like 4 reviewers, sometimes you have 5 reviewers. And imagine you have 5 different people, and they are all saying, and sometimes they write 2 pages each, 2 pages each, 2 pages each for 5 different people. And you have to be very, very thorough in your responses to all of them, because each one that you don't pay attention to their comments, they are more likely to take offense and say, this person is not listening to me, so I'm going to reject their paper. It could be you in the room as the reviewer. Imagine you spend the whole day or 2 or 3 days writing a report to a journal, and then the editor gives the author a chance of revising, and the author comes back and they've not addressed the point you are asking them to address. What would you do? You are also going to say, well, this person is not listening to me, so I'm going to reject this paper. And sometimes you even write in the session to the editor, I don't want to review this paper again because the authors are not listening to me. And often when editors see that type of comments, they are more leaning towards rejecting the paper outright, because you are not taking advantage of the reviewer's comments to develop your work. So if you don't want rejection, you go to some of those predatory journals. Some of them, you can get an acceptance rate as an academic, because everything you send there, they will accept it and publish it for you, and then you will always be very happy. But that does not advance your career. It doesn't help you to elevate your game. So many of the predatory journals, as soon as you've done the work, you submit today, next week, and you may recall just before I was talking about the review process, some of them taking up to 2 years. Instead of 2 years, you submit the paper this week, next week they come back and say, John, we have accepted your paper. And all you need to do is to pay us $1,000 for publication fee, and your work a few days later will be online. I think that is not the direction we want to be going into, because many of those journals, they are run by businessmen, and what they are interested in is making money out of you, and they do very little to advance your career. But when you're dealing with the truly elite journals, then the acceptance rate for most of them, you're looking at around 5% or acceptance rate. So that means that the vast majority of manuscripts that are sent there are going to be rejected. And that means that if there's one fault with your manuscript, you are giving somebody a chance to reject your paper. So you have to make sure your method is robust. You have to make sure your abstract is very succinct and concise. You have to make sure your introduction is well developed. You have to make sure your contributions are well articulated in the introduction. You have to make sure your method is very robust. And in your research, you're following ethical practices. And because if any of these are missing, you're more likely to see rejection. Sometimes you have uninvited and editorial papers. Those ones also tend to have 100% acceptance rate, because often the editors would reach out to somebody who's world-renowned in a particular field and ask them to comment on a particular issue or on a particular topic. So that one, they often are not subjected to the same review process as regular submissions. And this is what I was emphasizing on predatory journals. If you have had chance to look at many of them, you will see that sometimes they don't check the quality. You can see so many mistakes, so many errors in them. And I've had some colleagues, I will not name a country in Africa, that reached out to me and said, well, I've published 100 papers, you know, I've published 100 papers and I now want to do a PhD. I said, wow, this is very impressive. You should be a professor. But then I said, okay, send me a copy of your CV, then I will go through the arise and everything is predatory. There's no recognizable journal that they have published in. And I think to an extent, if you're putting all your good ideas in predatory journals, I think it becomes very, very difficult. At some point, I would say you become stigmatized, you know? People say, well, this guy only published in predatory journal. And I think that's not the reputation you want to convey. So why do papers get rejected? And here, because I do a lot of work on failure, so I try to borrow from two concepts that we have from the failure literature. We have one which is called the deterministic view, which is the contention that things happen because of outside factors. So there's factors that is situated outside the manuscript that causes it to be rejected. And the first one that I emphasize here is on competition for space. Almost every university in this world now is placing greater emphasis on publication. They are encouraging their staff to publish in good journals. And as a result, if you looked at the trend for journal submissions, it's like that. It's going up and up and up every year. Even when you guest edit special issue, I remember at the beginning when I was guest editing special issues, sometimes we used to get around 10 or 15 papers, and then we have to select 5 for that issue. Now, when I advertise special issues, often I get up to 100 people submitting, and I can only accept 5 papers from that 100. So you can see the vast majority of them are going to be rejected. And sometimes if I'm guest editing a special issue, and let's say I've been given allocation of only 5, and maybe you submit your paper and your paper is so good, it's outstanding, but I have only 5 slots, I can recommend that to the editor. And if the editor takes a look and he's impressed with your paper, he can also accept it for the regular issue. So if you pay attention to quality, I think you enhances your chances of getting the paper accepted. So competition is one of the main factors. And there are some journals that say we only publish 50 papers a year. Some say we only publish 25 papers a year. So they might get submission of 100, 500, or even 1,000, but that's the number they are going for. And therefore, the competition becomes much more intense. And you then have to make yourself very, very competitive in terms of how you develop your papers. And then also, there are some journals that pay a lot of attention to topics that are hot, like artificial intelligence. Like COVID. And those journals often, and there are quite a few, even in mainstream management journals, that if you send a work to them that is on these contemporary topics, they are more they look at it more favorably. I hope I'm making sense. They look at it more favorably because you are doing something that is very, very contemporary. Or if you're doing something on sustainability or on the environment, many journals look at those kind of topics very, very favorably compared to somebody who is studying, say, sense making in organizations. A lot of journals will struggle to see the practical utility. But I think if you're doing something that has relevance, you're more likely to be enjoy a much higher acceptance rate and maybe a much lower rejection rate. And then there are also journals that are industry specific. So either it's aviation, a journal of air transport management, tourism management, hospitality management, entrepreneurship journals. If you submit work that is not specific to what the journal has set out, they are going to reject it straight away. If you submit something to tourism management journal and it has nothing to do with tourism, they will reject it straight away. So sometimes you will get a rejection within a few hours of submitting because you have collected your data in a particular setting that is not in alignment with the scope of the journal. So if you submit something and maybe within 4 hours it's been rejected, it does not necessarily mean your paper is very bad. It's just that maybe you've selected the wrong journal to send it. And then also sometimes editors might reject papers because your approach or your paper is very, very specialized. And the editor cannot see how their audience can understand how maybe you use a particular mathematical modeling and it's so sophisticated. The editor doesn't think that the readers of the journal would be able to understand or be able to relate to what you have in your paper. So sometimes if you have a very specialized topic, you might want to go to a specialized journal rather than going to the mainstream, because a lot of the mainstream editors are more likely to also reject a paper because it's very, very specialized. And then there's something that also pertains to Africa as well. So this is a paper by Angunis, and it's in Journal of Management. And one of the reasons that they observe for rejecting papers is that there are some regions of the world that are seen as no good things could come from. And as a result, when somebody has collected the data from that setting, they tend to have a much higher rejection rate than somebody who's collecting it from, say, a more stable Western context. So sometimes you will get someone who might look at the data you have collected and say, well, maybe we don't think that your region is a very good fit, put it that way, a very good fit for examining that particular topic. But now I think maybe 20 years ago or 10 years ago, that was more potent, because now many journals, you have a more diverse editorial team. You have editorial teams that come from all corners of the globe. So they are less likely to stigmatize some regions. And just pertaining to stigmatization of regions, one thing that I have also observed over the years is that, especially for papers on Africa, if you position the paper in terms of the positioning, if you place this greater emphasis on Africa at the outset, you're also more likely to have the paper getting rejected, because and the way I have done it is that you have to position the paper to join the wider conversation that is going on in your field. So the paper speaks to some conversation going on, and then maybe you de-emphasize the context. Sometimes you get reviewers that say, oh, we think this paper is very good, you should highlight your context more into the introduction, then I will do that. But if I'm developing papers from scratch, even when I have my data from Africa, unless you go to the method section, you're not going to see that in the title. So, but sometimes I have Africa in the title because sometimes you get reviewers that says, oh, we think your paper will be beneficial if you have, if you play up your context more, then I will do that. But from my perspective, what I have found very useful is that if you de-emphasize the context, you also dismantle those people that often stigmatize some regions in terms of their ability to reject your paper. And then there are also some factors that arises, what I call arises from within. And these are factors that pertain to the manuscript itself, the paper that you have done. It could be your data analysis. Maybe you have not used a more advanced method, or maybe your focus or directions are not clear, or maybe there's technical issues. And here, when I say technical issues, especially those of you that are doing quantitative approach, and with quantitative, if reviewers and editors are seeing errors in your calculations, I'm afraid you're almost certain to get your paper rejected. So if you're doing quants, I would say make sure you get everything correct. Qualitative, you can ask people to explain more. But when you have numbers, I would say it's very, very important if you can make sure. And then the manuscript. Sometimes you want, so many times you see people submitting manuscripts to special issues, to journals, and they have not formatted it in line with the journal requirements. So any journal that you are submitting to, if you go to their website, they'll have the guidelines and say, this is how you should format this manuscript, or this is how you should format manuscript before you send it to us. Many, many journals, if you don't format it in line with what they are asking you to do, they will reject it. As soon as they see and you've not formatted it in line with what they are requiring you to do, they will just reject the paper because you are not paying attention to what the journal has set out to do. There are a few other journals that if you don't adhere to the requirement of formatting, they will unsubmit the manuscript in the system and then ask you to format it and submit it again. But those journals are tend to be more favorable. Sometimes they see very good potential in your paper. So instead of rejecting it, they might say, okay, we are unsubmitting it in the system, format it in line with the journal requirement, and then submit it back to them. But if I'm pushed, I would say make sure your papers are well within the requirement in terms of formatting, in terms of word count, because sometimes there are some journals that says if you have more than 5,000 words, that's a big no-no. And if you, for some reasons, you don't read that instruction and you send your paper and it's more than the word count they've given you, they're also going to come back to you and reject the paper outright. And then you lose your chance. In some cases, it might be that journal might be the natural home for your paper, but because you are not adhering to the requirement, the paper will then be rejected. And then there are also issues in terms of the manuscript that you have a lot of mistakes that I hinted before. They have a lot of mistakes, and sometimes you have reviewers that are native speakers. And if you're reading your manuscript and you're seeing mistakes there, mistakes there, mistakes there, mistakes there, almost certain they are likely to reject the paper. From my experience, there are almost more cases you'll see people rejecting the paper. They are not going to give you a chance. Sometimes they see very good insight in the paper, and then they will suggest to you that you should find a proofreader to help improve the paper. But for me, if I need proofreading, I will do it before I submit. And I think that's the point because then it reduces your chances of getting the paper either rejected at the beginning or after the review process. The most common reasons for journals rejecting papers especially in the social science, is originality. They say, oh, what is new here? What is it that you are saying that is different? Or some people call it contributions. We are not seeing any contributions there. So as I have guest editors for a number of journals, you see many journals, they have that set out in their system. The system itself gives the option, if somebody submits a manuscript and the contribution is not there, you don't even have to write a sentence. There's a button you click, and then you select reject, and you form a sentence, and you send it to the author. So contribution is one of the most common one, because the journals have already written that in the system that you use to submit the paper. So if it's not there, the editor even doesn't have to write the sentence that a contribution is not there. They just click on that, select reject, and click send, and your paper has been rejected. So if you're developing your paper, make sure that you say, and if you see a lot of my papers, I would say, even at the outset, I'm making these contributions, 1, 2, 3, and I will make sure you see that very clearly. I will make sure it starts in its own paragraph, such that you cannot say you did not see it. Because I know that's one of the main reasons for journals rejecting papers. And sometimes also you might have the contributions there, but the editor thinks that the contributions are weak. They are not strong enough, or some use the word, they are not sufficiently robust. So then it's very difficult to address those type of comments. Some editors will give you a pathway to make or to develop the contributions further. But broadly speaking, if you don't know how to articulate contributions of your paper, if you looked at many of the leading journals, either in the A or the A-star category, you will see that often there's a section in the introduction that people have articulated a clear contribution. Follow them. Mimic what they have set out as their contribution. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, no? If you looked at maybe 10, 20 different papers and you see everybody, this is how they've set out their contribution, can we learn from that? And I think if you can do that, you then find your own way of setting out your contribution. And that does not mean that just say, well, my paper is a contribution because I examine A, B, C. Many leading editors, I'm afraid, are not going to buy that. You have to show them how examining A, B, C makes a difference to them. So if you can do that, you also stand a chance of mitigating rejection. And then there are a lot of rejections that come from unethical study design. So journals like Journal of Business Ethics and the number of journals in the sciences that requires you to seek ethical approval from your institutions if you're going to conduct a study. So if for some reasons you say, well, this study, we didn't need ethical approval, you have to explain why you did not need ethical approval. And if it involves interactions with human beings or talking to people or collecting sample from people and you did not seek ethical approvals, if an editor sees that straight away, doesn't matter how well crafted your paper is, how you design it, how excellent or groundbreaking your findings are, I'm afraid they are going to go down the rejection route. So if you're going to collect data, I would say, especially if you're collecting from people or consumers, whatever group of people you're collecting it from, look for your institutional guidelines. What does this university say? Or what is the form that needs to be completed? Or have you conducted a study here that you did not fill in that form? In our institution, and as I hinted yesterday, I'm in charge of the research and innovation profile. If somebody conducts a study without ethical approval, we ask them to discard the data. And the university even applies that to students. So if a student goes in their dissertation, go and do interviews, and maybe they've done 20, whatever number of interviews they've done, but they did not seek ethical approval, the university insists they discard the data. So we have to apply the same standards to ourselves. Sometimes maybe you are involved in a project with multiple people from multiple institutions. And if one of them has an ethical approval in their institutions, then you do not necessarily have to have another in your institutions to meet the requirement of having high ethical standard. But you need, if you are the lead person in a project and it involves collection of data from people, I will say make it a point to always seek an ethical approval. In some institutions, it's just about sending an email to the person in charge of ethics. And they will say, well, I agree that, okay, this study can be conducted in a reasonable way. You keep the email somewhere. Because some editors will say to you, I want to see confirmation from your research office that this project was approved. And so it's very, very important because sometimes your paper could come very, very close to the line and you've done all the changes, you reach a point of an acceptance, and then the ethical issue comes up. Editor says, I need some documentation from your institution that this project was granted an ethical approval. And if you cannot, the moment you say, I cannot, they will send a rejection letter back to you. So if you can, please, we make sure. And then also there are some kind of rejection decisions that are common. You see in rejection letters, sometimes they say it's out of scope. Maybe your topic is not what the journal is interested in, or limited contribution that I've hinted. Sometimes editors use this convoluted term. We don't think that your paper can survive the peer review process. And that often means that the editor, maybe they have seen problems in the introduction, in the method, in the literature review, and also in your conclusions. And therefore they think that your paper is not robust enough. Or sometimes they use it to hide the reasons for rejecting the paper. And then in recent years, many journals have also introduced, and I'm sure, I don't know if you guys use Turnitin to check plagiarism. When you submit papers to journals now, many of them have a threshold. They have a threshold and say, if your Turnitin score is over 30%, the action editor should reject the paper. So sometimes I get the instructions from editors when I'm guest editing for journals. They say, if this threshold is met, you should reject the paper. So sometimes you have done everything perfectly, but for some reasons, your Turnitin score is just too high. And that means that sometimes the editors might not tell you. That's why they are rejecting the paper, because they think that your work overlaps with so many other work, and therefore they will reject the paper. So sometimes one of the things that I suggest to many academics to do is that you can check your own work through Turnitin system, especially if you write a lot of papers, which I do. When you write a lot of papers, sometimes there's temptation to write the same sentence that you've done before. Editors are not going to forgive you if it traces back to your old paper. So you always have to find new ways of writing even sentences that you've written before. And that's one way we can reduce the plagiarism score. And sometimes also, especially those of you that work on project teams, you might have done everything perfectly, but there's somebody lazy in the team that have just copied something from a particular website and they have put it in the paper and you don't know and you submit and it becomes problematic. So if you check it, sometimes you see a session that was completed by someone in your team, is all that is accounting for the plagiarism. Maybe that might be the time to eliminate that person from your next project because they are not bringing a lot of newness to the table. But broadly, if you sit down, you read a lot of papers and you write your own, it's very, very unlikely that is going to get a plagiarism score or is going to get any score from Turnitin. And if you can reduce your Turnitin score for many journals, then you get to the next level. If your Turnitin score, there's lots of errors in the manuscript, then you're done, I'm afraid, in terms of getting the paper rejected. And Turnitin score reflect on the work overlapping with other works. There are some impacts of rejection. And for a few studies says when you get rejected, your productivity, your professional satisfaction goes downwards, can demotivate people, and it can also force people to drop out of the publication process altogether. Imagine if you're working on 2 papers and the 2 papers get rejected this week, 2 weeks time you submit, they both get rejected again. A few weeks later, you submit them again and they get rejected. It's very, very likely you will lose your motivation to want to continue. But maybe that's the time we need to redouble our effort, I would say. I have a lot of manuscripts that I have packed. In other words, they are sitting on my shelf, you know, and these are work that I did, and I try journals, they get rejected. I say, okay, let me pack these for a few months, start a few new projects, and I'll come back to them. And over time, I recycle them, and then I eventually get them accepted. But you need to make sure that multiple rejection does not become a reason why you are not starting your next project. And also, it forces scholars from disengaging, and there are different range of pain associated with rejection. If you submit and a day or 2 later it's rejected, there's not much pain involved. But if you get a revision chance, and after multiple rounds of revision, sometimes over 2 years, 3 years, and the paper is rejected, that's very, very painful. Even I have a paper that is sitting on that fence as we speak. We have one paper which I did with one colleague in Ghana. We asked him to do data collection for us. And for 3 years, we've been doing revision and revision. And still, we have editors saying to us, we are warning you, if you do not address these issues properly in the next round, are more likely to reject the paper. After many years of working on it. But for me, one thing that I've always done is that I've always had multiple projects. So my ability to get published is not predicated on just that one paper getting accepted. Earlier on in my career, then that would have been the case, because earlier on in my career, I used to have around 2 papers under review. And that was the advice we were given. When I started my first academic job, we had an academic mentor, and he was saying to us that at every stage, you need 2 papers under review, 2 papers under review. And I thought it was a very good idea. You always need to send, at least develop 2 papers, send it in the review, and at the same time, you're working on other papers on the side to make sure you always have 2 papers under review. But over time, I've encountered people that were working on multiple projects that were saying 2 papers under review is not even, it's a terrible advice. They were looking at 10 under review. So then it makes you reflect, you know? Before I was struggling to get 2 under review, now you're saying I need 10. How do I get to 10? that means maybe I need to treble my effort if I want to get it close to 10. And I think that's how we have to approach this, that we need to maybe get to maybe 5 under review. I would say 2 under review is not a good advice. Maybe 5 under review. Then if 2 get rejected, the impact of rejection is minimal. Let's say you have 5 papers in the review process and 1 is rejected today. It's not the same as if you have 2 papers under review and both get rejected. So if we want to deal with rejection, then that also means that we need to maybe put more papers, we need to produce more papers in the system. And that means that sometimes okay, just a few things to close off. How do we mitigate rejection? If you've not reviewed, and as I hinted before yesterday, you can volunteer to review for journals. That's a good way to get best understanding of best practice. You have to know your journals, what kind of papers the journals are publishing. Is it conceptual? Is it empirical? Is it methodological? If it's a methodological paper and you send empirical paper to them, they are going to reject it. And that means you have to also pick the right journals. If you have a review paper, you maybe go to review journals, method, empirical, all these you go through. A few things, and this touch on some of the things that I alluded to yesterday. So I'm not going to go through them as well. Revision. So now you've submitted the paper, you're very lucky. You've got a revision decision, which is very, very good. So when you get a revision decision, you have to bear in mind, this is not an acceptance letter. Even when you get conditional acceptance letter, don't think it's an acceptance. Think of it as I need to do all the things they are asking me to do. Because conditional acceptance can then tend to become minor revision, and then can then tend to become major revision, and then you are done for rejection. So the chance of being somebody giving you an opportunity to revise and resubmit, please take that chance. And when I've guest edited for journals, sometimes I see papers in Africa, I said, okay, let me try and support this particular author. Although reviewers are saying, okay, Joseph, get rid of this paper, I said, I'll give this person a chance. But if you come back and you've not addressed it, then I'm afraid I can't help anymore, you know? So when you're given a chance of revision, make sure you do not disappoint the editor that gave you the chance of revision. Because some editors, most of the time, editors or associate editors, they might overrule the reviewer. So when you go back and you disappoint the editor, they are more likely to lean towards rejection in the next round. So if you're given a chance, do not disappoint the editor. And I've mentioned the response letter, very detailed response letter. Don't go and write and say, well, they say, well, you should revisit institutional theory, you should revisit resource-based theory, and then you just respond, I have done it. This is not good, you know? If I'm doing that, I'll say, okay, I read this particular paper, I looked at this particular paper, and I will include in-text citations as well. And then I looked at this paper, they make this type of argument, and I drew on this argument to address the point that you're making. If a reviewer sees you respond that way, it's okay, this person is taking me seriously. But lots of time, you see authors send their response letter and say, oh, they said, this is done in page 5. This has been done, is okay, you know? The reviewer has written a whole paragraph and you are saying it's okay. What do you think the reviewer will say to you, you know, when the paper goes back? Even if they gave you a minor revision, they might say, this person is not serious. Maybe I should reject the paper. So then they move from minor, they gave you last round to rejection. And it will be down to you, not them. So when you're given a chance, do not disappoint. That's something that I learned from my mother. So, and then also, there are a few other areas, and I'll come back to some of this. One way that if we want to be really successful in trying to publish papers, and this is something that I said, that you need to consistently work in, day out. It's not something that you want to say, well, maybe one day a month, I will try and do all of this at once. No, it's not possible. Maybe you're one of those geniuses, if you're one of them, yes. But I would say consistent approach, 10%, 10%, maybe 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day. And I think if you can do that, over time, you have manuscripts that are sitting on the shelf. I'm sure we can do that. So what can we do? So often we have mismatch in terms of our expertise and general expectations. So you submitted a paper, they are asking you to maybe use a particular technique, and you don't know how to do it. There might be an opportunity to reach out to somebody, or they are asking you to perform a particular statistical analysis, and you are sitting in the business school and you're not good. Maybe that's the time to reach out to somebody in engineering or mathematics that might have a more advanced knowledge of that to help you rectify that issue. So when you have mismatch of expertise, maybe that's the time to find co-authors. Or maybe you've done a very good manuscript, but everybody's pointing out this language issue. Can you find somebody to bring on board that have maybe a much better language skill to help address that particular issue? And also, and this is, I borrow from the literature on social capital, which is kind of relationship networks. And for many journals, there's often a conference that is associated with them. So if you want to publish in management journals, you want to be going to management conferences. And in many cases, you get editors that run workshops on how to publish in their journals. Editors also sometimes, they themselves will attend the conferences. That might be a good time to get to know people and then also to form new collaborations for new projects. And that is often beneficial in terms of developing the right skill set to be successful in the publication endeavor. So there's no effortless, I don't know how much time I have, but there's no effortless success. If somebody's telling you that they are not getting rejection, it means they are not working. Because if you are sitting at home and you are not submitting papers, then you are not getting rejection. You have 100% success rate, and you're always very happy because you're not submitting to any journals, you are sitting at home, you are not publishing, so it's very good life, But if you are getting rejection, I would say that's an evidence of you working. That's an evidence of you trying. And you ultimately will be in a better position than somebody who is not getting rejection. And if you get rejected, take some break, maybe a day or so, revisit the paper, read the decision letter. Is there something useful from the decision letter that you can take on board? And I've had papers rejected at conferences that I have published in an elite journal because the reviewers at the conference was very, very good in giving me an excellent idea for free, which I then used to develop the paper. And after that, I thought the paper was just too good to send to a conference, so I sent it to a journal. So sometimes some reviewers will give you something that you think, oh, this is how I should frame my argument. This is how I should position the paper. But many a time you get reviewers that are just there to criticize. They criticize, and they offer no solution. They are not telling you what you need to do. They are just criticizing. And I tend not to like that type of reviewer. If you are criticizing me, criticize, but give me a solution. Give me a suggestion on how I can fix that. And I think in many decision letters, or sometimes it might come from the editor-in-chief or the associate editor, they will give you a pathway. Sometimes it could just be one sentence in the whole decision letter of 20 pages or more, just one sentence that might be what you need to reposition your paper. So always take a closer look at the decision letter and say, okay, maybe is there something useful that I can take from this and move my manuscript elsewhere? And don't take it personal, don't take it personal. Sometimes you get a decision from editors or reviewers. They say, well, you don't understand the subject. You have no idea what you're talking about. We don't think you must be an undergraduate student. They never met you, but they're saying you must be an undergraduate student. And sometimes you will feel very offended, you get angry. No, that's not the approach. And if you talk to many of the world leading scholars, even some that have developed concepts, that have developed theory, they say sometimes they see authors or reviewers say, oh, you should adopt their idea. And then they said, they tell the author they have not understood the idea that they themselves have developed. So reviewers can come from different angles with conflicting views. Sometimes reviewers' views are not well-grounded. I'll put it that way, not well-grounded. So you need to be able to see their comments that are not well-grounded and the ones that are very useful for your paper development. And you always have to ask yourself, it's possible this reviewer is right. No, it's very, very likely this reviewer is right. And sometimes, especially when you get a decision letter from a journal, let's say they send your paper to 4 different reviewers, and you can see the same message, the same thing coming from all of them. That should tell you that they are definitely right. But when you have maybe divergent approaches in terms of comments, that might be that maybe there's a possibility that the reviewer might not be right. But always, I think I always start with the assumption that the reviewer might be right. But I've also learned to ignore reviewers' comments. There are some comments that I see, I know automatically to ignore. And sometimes I see comments on my papers about contribution being no contributions in the paper. But if I have articulated a very strong contribution in the paper at the outset, and I get a decision letter and the reviewers are saying I have not stated a clear contribution, then I'm almost certain likely to ignore those comments and then move on with my manuscript. And sometimes you get a decision letter, you get angry, you want to send an email to the editor. Why have you rejected my paper? And I get lots of these emails as well of authors whose papers have been rejected, say, well, I think I'm being discriminated against. No, we are just looking at the paper you submitted and the essential elements are not there. So whenever you get to the point of sending the email, no, do not, because you're more likely to meet that editor again. And if you send an angry email to that editor, maybe you sent it to David, and then David said, Joseph, do you know this person sent me an email? He's saying this sort of things, and he doesn't respect the peer review process. The next time you send your paper to me, what do you think I'm going to do? So if you're very angry, do not send the email. Sometimes you send the email to the editor, and then you send it to the paper to a different journal. You quickly realize the same editor is there as the associate editor of that journal as well. And if you think you're clever, okay, you can go to the website and check and say, okay, this guy is not here. You send the paper there. Sometimes he's the newly appointed editor. And your paper goes to him and he sends you a decision letter, reject the paper. So whenever you are very angry, take a break and say, what is it that I can take from this decision letter to improve the chances of my paper becoming eventually accepted? And I think ultimately also we need to build up resilience. We need to build up resilience. We need to be very, very strong that if your work is rejected, you have to just see that normal, you know? Papers are very likely to be rejected. If it's rejected here, it means it's one person's view or 4 people's view. I can go to some other places. And then you can try other journals as well. But if all the essential elements are missing, then you're going to get rejection wherever you're going. You go there, you reject it, you go there, you go there, and you're going everywhere and it's being rejected. So make sure you have the essential elements there. And then if the work is rejected, maybe you can borrow some ideas from the reviewer's comments and then revamp the paper and send it out. So I'm going to leave it here and open the floor if there's any question. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this presentation. If there are any questions, we'll take them before starting the example when the next presentation. There's a microphone set up in the room. If you have a question, you can please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your presentation. Professor, thank you very much for your presentation. Yesterday, there was an advice that we should start with 2 first in the review, and then we are working with 2. About the resources that we have, we don't have much. The case where we don't have much community there, and we're just the classes. We are actually and degree students. And we are advising that we should be radical. At least we start with 10 people in the review, and then working on 10. You'll be doing everything. Working on 10, gathering data for that 10. Are you not going to compromise on quality?
I think, thank you very much for your question. I think I'm looking at it more as a long-term plan, you know, not something maybe 2 years, but maybe 3 years from now, 4 years from now, that should be the trajectory. Because if you looked at almost all the universities in the world, everybody is moving their standard up and up and up and up. So if you guys start at 2 and 5 years time you're still at 2, whatever improvement you're making is not making difference in terms of the reputation of the institution. So I think it's good if you can get 2, but long term, can I have a plan to get me to say 5 years from now? I think that should be the trajectory. And I think also to have an output, if you have, let's say 2 outputs, it's 2 papers under review is very, very unlikely that within 2 years, you will get 1 accepted. Unless you go for one of those, as they are saying, punching journals, If you go to one of those, then you might get one. But if you're going for the very good journals, I would say maybe 3, then within 2 years, you can get 1 or 2 of them accepted. And I think if you can do that at an individual level, I think it will enhance your own reputation. So some of my work, some of the projects that I've been involved in, sometimes I will pay with my own money, benefit long-term to me. And sometimes maybe your institution can support, but I think as a long-term, you get to 5 in 5 years, I think that will help enormously. I hope that answers your question.
This was to find the part of common practice where the viewers they want you to send them your raw data. In the course of the presentation, you said that sometimes if editors find that your calculations, you have it wrong somewhere, can lead to rejection. And I think that can come about if they have access to, for example, your data used for your analysis. So I'm asking, is it right that the request for that data as part of doing your work, what are the risks? Because I'm thinking that if that's possible, and they take your paper is rejected, at least you also gotten your data compromised.
So thank you very much for your question. So for many journals, they give you an option of making the data available upon request. So sometimes maybe editor is sitting on the fence on whether to ultimately accept the paper or not accept the paper. Some of them can ask you, say, well, we want to see the underlying data to make sure that is correct. And they are not going to publish it. You have to make it clear that you don't want that document to be published. And I think most editors are not going to publish that document. They just want to check your numbers to make sure that they are believable. And even some journals, actually, when you are submitting, they have a session where they say data would be provided, would be requested upon acceptance. So if they accept your paper, they want to see the raw data as well. So, but I think if you spend time collecting your data, you can always emphasize that to an editor. If they request the data that you don't want that data to be published, they can check the numbers themselves, but you don't want that data to be published. Maybe you want to use it for future study as well. I hope that answers your question. Hi.
I am asking about this predicted airlines. With the quality levels, this year the paper can be in Q1, next year and up to Q2 and then they come up. And when it comes to predicted journals, some journals that generate predictive or at some point, some conditions get them to predict.
Okay, so I think if you look at many good journals, I think there are some symptoms that we can look for in predatory journals. Let's say today you go to your office, you get an email from this journal, say, well, we think there's an opportunity for you to publish your paper. We will give you a decision in 4 days. It should ring bells, that there's something wrong here. And I think from talking to your vice chancellor, he's looking to build a research capacity. And that means that for a lot of universities, the journal that you are submitting to has to be Scopus Index. And almost all the predatory journals, they are not Scopus Index. You will not see them there. So that should give you on Web of Science. And all the predatory journals, they are not in Web of Science. So that should give you an indication. And Web of Science are not going to give impact factor to predatory journals. So I think if we looked at these 2 indicators, then I think we will get a better sense of predatory journals. And often, as soon as they accept your paper, they send the request for payment very quickly. And I think that should also be something that should ring bell. And I'm sure if you send the paper there, you see they said it's going to review, and then it comes back, there's one line sentence as the review, you know, and said, add a full stop to this sentence, and that's the whole review. And as soon as you add the full stop to that sentence, the paper is accepted. That should also ring bell. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, and thank you audience for this participation. Before I call Professor Sapon to come, I'd like to say very big to you for
Thank you.
your presentation this morning, and also pray to God that He grants us the grace to be able to cope with the different rejection levels, so that you can publish more.
Okay.
Microstoria, the new term in management research.
So we had a file corrupted, so I had to get back my external drive. So I've got a bit of story to do with you today, which is Microstoria. Probably in response to what Joseph was saying earlier on, I had a reject yesterday morning. The paper is already been rejected 3 times. It's for one of my PhD students we've been working on. And sadly, was it around 10 o'clock yesterday, it was rejected again. So I have to go back again and find somewhere else to send to. The reviewers can be terrible people. But anyway, so what I want to do today, I've titled it Microstoria, and Microstoria as a new turn in management research. So I was thinking, what are the kind of new stuff that people could do if they want to engage in some management research, especially in the South, and not just management research, but even in engineering. What are the new trends? What are the new issues? What is it that excites the academy? Typically when at the British Academy of Management, when we have our small grants, which we give out every year, we give out about £70,000 for small research, where we allocate around 5,000 each for each application that comes through. We will normally receive about 100 or so from different people, and we'll end up giving it out to about 7-10 people and so on. In the last 2 years, I've been part of the panel that normally will go through these applications. And I just thought some of the issues that is propping up these days, the kind of applications that we will fund, or typically if you go to the ESRC website or the UKRI website, the kind of projects that they will pay for today. What are the kind of projects, what are the kind of issues that you write about that people are very interested in, especially from the South, or even if you are based in the North, the kind of stuff that you write that is likely to attract funding, if not funding, very likely to impress reviewers so that they are likely to send your papers to review. So I'm kind of interested in this kind of big ideas, and that's what I want to discuss with you. But in discussing with you, I couldn't go down a particular track to say, we're going to look at stuff on knowledge management or entrepreneurship education or engineering education, or we're interested in science lab technology education, or we're interested in strategic foresight, relationalism, or whatever that I do. But I thought there's a new trend in management research in particular, what people do, what is selling. And that is what I've labeled as Microstoria. I'm developing as a methodological approach. At the moment, I'm using it as a kind of a theoretical lens to explore some of the work that I'm doing for among ethnic minorities. We're looking at coping strategies, how people support others, especially those in professional occupations. That notwithstanding, we are much more interested in the burden of that these professionals actually carry when they have to deal with people that they share the same social collective identity with. So me as a Black person,
a black person is allocated to me for me to help mentor. Everybody thinks that's the right thing to do, especially because we are minorities. They think, oh, David will understand the Nigerian very well. He's a black guy, so he gives me another black guy. But the reality is, in an ideal world, I wouldn't want to mentor a black guy. I've got so many reasons. Number one, yeah, because we are brothers. It takes some few days and he will start to take advantage of you. Yeah, that is the burden. It's the same way if I'm being mentored by someone else. Sometimes you want to get someone from a totally different ethnicity. It's not that we cannot work with ourselves, but that burden that we carry. So how do these mentors actually cope? But the reality is, in most organizations, what they do is they will try to pair people because they share the same social collective identity. So you are black, you come in there, everybody wants to give you to a black. You are gay, you come in there, we want to give you to a gay, yeah, a Muslim or whatever, thinking that you share the same social collective identity so you can go for the same beer and stuff, which has become problematic, right? So we're using this kind of stuff as a new lens, and I think it's applicable in many areas, and I want us to talk through what really this microstoria stuff is about. I'm developing it into a methodological test, so hopefully in a year or two, we should publish something on microstoria as a methodology. So I want to discuss with you, what is this microstoria that I've been talking about? What is it all about? And hopefully some of you can start to rethink your own research as a new kind of lens to explore and potentially make some relevant impact and get to some of these journals. Right, so I will start with this photograph. I'm not sure anybody here knows that lady there. Anybody from Koforidua? Well, I was born in Koforidua in the late 70s, and I remember in the mid 80s, this young lady, she was in Form 4, so the last batch of the Form 4 guys. And she had gone to school at Koforidua SDA. She had asked for permission to use the urinal. She went in there, never came back to class. They started looking for her, nobody could find her. They went into the urinal, they saw her clothing in there, and she was nowhere to be found. She was declared a missing person. Her father was arrested, the landlord was arrested, everybody thought she's been kidnapped. Then in the end, well, they said she's been taken by dwarfs, pygmies. Yeah, Yasimotia Fana. She went, nobody could find her. Well, for days on days, so they went to seek the counsel from oracles and realized she's been taken by the Waterbury, the Koforidua, whatever. Yeah, so she went in there 3 months, came back, and this is how she was dressed when she came back. And she's now the, how do you call her? She will be the resident fetish priest of the mine. So Nana Obotebre up there, and she's normally called Motia Konfo. So if you go to Koforidua, you can ask of her Motia Konfo, and you can see the Motia down there. Yeah, pages. And how do Motia look like? Motia is kind of little people, isn't it? When we're kids, we told the stories of Motia. Little people, magical. You can't identify them. Massive stories. They eat bananas. Their foot actually moves downwards. They've got long beard. Yeah, massive stories. And this is how Nana Obotebre came to be. And I want to think about these are the stories of the little people. We've been told all these stories, but nobody's ever seen a Motia before. There's been a few occasions we've gone to the mountains to search for mangoes. We get lost and we get home. The assumption is that we went in there on a day that we're not supposed to be there, and that's how we got lost. Before the Motia, yeah, they are magical, you lose your way and so on. But we've never seen Motia before. They are known to be very good herbalists. They cure diseases, and that's what she's doing now. Yeah, making lots of money from plant medicine and so on. So what are the stories of these little people that we hear? And in everyday life, we assume that we live with them, but we really care about them. If we care about them, we would have gone in there to hear a lot more about them, potentially learn some of their pharmacological techniques and try to bring them back home, get some of their magical ones to improve our lives in our society and so on. So I'll be coming back to these guys, and I want you to think about Motia and this very little man who are very powerful, but do we care about them? We've all become Christians now. That mountain that we used to go to, people have started building there. The whole forest is being degraded. We don't care about these people. Of course, we are destroying their environment, isn't it? We're supposed to keep the forest for them to be in there, but we don't care. I can imagine some of them will be crying. There is mining going on there. They are destroying our homes. Nobody cares about us. These are the little people in our society we don't care about, but we know the magical powers that will help solve our societal problems and so on. So I want us to talk about these little people today. What are their stories? How can it help to extend our understanding of contemporary thinking, contemporary understanding of what we do? The funny thing is, when I started thinking about this stuff, Microstoria, Motia people, and their stories, I thought it was all about Black Africans, Black African magic. So the first time I was talking about this in my department, everybody was laughing. They thought I was mad. Until I found out it's not just Black Africans who talk about Motia. Yeah. So back in the Americas, before the white people took over, those native people also have stories about the Motia people. So you can see Obroni Motia down there with the beard, and they have the same stories with their magical wands and stuff. And you can see their homes. So somewhere in Pennsylvania, somewhere, they've got these homes where people go there to look at how these people lived. And they tell stories about their lifestyles. And it's incredible. You just can't understand how these people live. And is there any possibility we can hear a lot more about these people? Because they've got a magic wand. Yeah, they've got the medicine stuff that will help cure diseases. Hopefully they can help us preserve our forest and so on. But surprisingly, we are destroying their forest and so on. Why? Because we cannot see them. Had it been that we could see them, we go into the forest to bulldoze, to mine, we would have seen that somebody's home is here, and potentially we would have been much more benevolent to these guys, but we don't, because we cannot see them. Why can't we see them? Why can't we hear them? These are people who've lived out so many years, across generations, and it's just not in Africa, in North America, and I'm very sure I have to look further. Maybe I'll find some pygmies as well in Asia and other places, embedded in stories and everyday narratives that people use to describe what they do in their situated practices. So what then is Microstoria? We'll be coming back to this little people in a second. And what I call this Microstoria is the stories of little people. Yeah, so the lifestyle of little people under the microscope. Who are the little people? Yes, of course, because we've been talking about Motia, we think they are invisible and so on, but the Bible tells us God is with us. The Motia guys tells us they are with us every day, but they are invisible. The angels are with us. We see them, but we don't notice them. We speak to them, we live with them. And it's the same in our everyday situated practices. We live with people, we never talk to them. The sad bit is when you talk about management research, everybody's thinking about the chief executive, yeah, the managers. We're talking about engineering, management, everybody's talking about Steve West, yeah, the Brunel, the great engineers and so on. We never talk about, right, we have a problem in Kumasi, we want to get the roads solved or whatever, congestion stuff solved. I don't think anybody will want us to go to Obofor, or I've got the other guy who is my pastor. What's his name? The nation's #1. Hey. We will see in a second. We may probably have to start to go to Opambo. That is my argument. And we will see whether we have to go to Opambo at all. Because for a very long time, we have ignored those people on the periphery. And these are the little people. Management research, because it's built on scientific ideas, because it's built on westernized ideas, whereby we trivialize the everyday, we trivialize stuff around us. We tend not to speak to these people in organizations as well. You go in there to solve problems. Nobody will. If somebody wants to understand how these institutions actually run, why is KSTU a very good institution? I doubt anybody will want to go and talk to the security man. Nobody will do. The cleaner, nobody will do. They want to talk to the professors, the vice chancellor, the students, and so on. But the reality is, if you want to know probably why this institution runs better, it is the security man who's got the keys. But in traditional research, these are the people who are ignored. These are the people we never listen to. These are the people whose voices, I call them subjugated voices in objective discourse. We never speak to them because we think they are nobodies. And the new tend to, the contemporary tend to microstoria is saying we should turn around a bit and speak to those people. And let's see how it pans out in management work and what has been done already and how potentially we could exploit this. Because we've got much more interesting stories to tell the whites. Are we telling our stories? No, because we also want to speak to the manager. I want to know why a crazy person like, what's his name? Obinim. He's got thousands of people following him. You think he's crazy? No, he's not. He's a leader. He's very rich. He's an entrepreneur. There's a lot we can learn from. If that guy who's never been to school before is able to con professors, everybody to follow him like that, then he's got something to tell us in leadership. But when we're talking about leadership, those are the people we will not speak to. We want to speak to the people at the upper echelons. We want to speak to the president, the chief executives, and so on. And the call to microstoria is saying, let's move the debate along a bit. So what then is microstoria? When I say microstoria, I call it contemporaneous storylines. So the creation and sharing of contemporaneous storylines by people or groups whose polyphonic voices are often subjugated. So the people that nobody wants to speak to, their voices are subjugated in objective discourse. And in recent times, it's been used so much in rhetorical history. So those guys in business history, they tend to talk about all those kind of micro stories that you can use for persuasive reasons. So think of it. When we talk about this little story, we're talking about very little stories. And historians are saying you can use those little stories to make changes in everyday lives. And for that matter, there are so many people in history who are advocating that these stories can be used to engage with stakeholders. These stories is what people want to hear. There's an advert when I was I was very young. There was an advert which is so much etched on my mind. It was Key Soap. Yeah, Medofupa. It's incredible. And you wouldn't know where the story is going to. You want to know the story, and the guy is sitting down with his big pot belly like mine, just crabbing, thinking the wife was talking about him. And in the end, it was about the Key Soap. And these are kind of the persuasive stories that we could use in everyday life. And the business historians have been using it, and in recent times, it's being used as a tool to shaping public responses to public situations. So if you think about it, those very good adverts, those very good stories that are etched on our minds are actually those that come in the form of stories. It's not just Shatawale coming and throwing his legs everywhere. It's somebody telling a very little story. Yeah, Abedi Pele, how do you manage to keep at your form? What is your secret? I use Veggie-Bomb. Yes. Those little stories. So they are used as rhetorical tools, rhetorical devices. But in business and management research, for a very long time, we've not paid so much attention to, especially when it is coming from these little people on the streets. There's so much we can learn from them, and how do we extract information from them? How do we get stuff from them? So what then really is microstoria as a methodological tool? It's an intensive project which basically comes to define the stories of little people. So you get a group of little people, you want them to tell you their stories. What actually got us to start with this work was a story I was told by someone. So somewhere in London, there was a problem with one of the hospitals. Children were dying. So many children were dying. Normally for them, they expect zero neonatal rates. No child has to die. And all of a sudden, there was one particular hospital. One child will die. After a month, another will die, another will die. So they decided to host an inquiry, to understand what is happening in this particular hospital, all over the news. So the inquiry was going on. You got all the medical practitioners in there. They are being questioned. You've got the nurses are being spoken to, the directors. We want to understand what is really happening in this particular ward, because we want to know why the children were dying. They couldn't reach a decision. They couldn't really identify why the children were dying. And the story continued. The children kept dying. Then they decided to put up another inquiry. And it was in the course of the inquiry that one of the guys who was on the panel, he was from Newcastle. And those people from the north normally, they smoke a lot. They like to smoke compared to the south. And this guy actually popped out for a break and he wanted to have a quick cigarette, a quick fag. So he moved out of the hall, went to the cabin where he could smoke, and she found a cleaner, one of the cleaners there. And they ended up having a conversation. Oh, hello, how are you? So, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, we're doing an inquiry. We want to understand why children are dying. Oh, that's interesting, my love. So are you from Jordan? Like, yeah, from Newcastle. I've been here for a very long time. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, and what do you do here? Oh, I'm one of the cleaners. Oh, that's nice. How long have you been working here? Oh, 5 years. Then he said, well, 5 years. Oh, that's interesting. Well, like I said, we're doing an inquiry. A lot of children are dying here. We really can't understand. Then the cleaner started laughing. So why are you laughing? I'm serious. That's what we're doing in there. He said, well, I think I know why the children are dying. Then the man, okay, so why are the children dying here? She said, I've been a cleaner here for 5 years. Every morning when I come in, I have to clean this cupboard. And what I come to see here every morning is the number of cigarette butts. Yeah, so what is actually happening is those nurses on duty at night, when they go in, they spend a lot of time smoking. So every 5 minutes, somebody goes for a fag break. They are smoking, and that is potentially the reason. So you see, you can see the number of butts I have here I'm cleaning. It's just getting out of hand. These people just smoke. So they went in back there, trying to understand what is killing these children. And finally, they started asking the nurses how many times they go on break and stuff, started counting the cigarette butts, and they got to know that the children were dying because the nurses were actually over smoking at night. Microstoria, the power of the little people, the stories of little people who traditional research would never speak to, because these people, she's a cleaner. It's the same story of the London Underground. The guy was employed, he was supposed to put oils on the tracks at night to reduce the squeaky sound. You know, if you use the London Underground, it's just annoying. Well, the idea of putting the oil on the tracks was to reduce the friction and, of course, to extend the lifeline of the tracks, which will mean that if you have to replace the track every year or two, let's say every 2 years, if you oil them regularly, then it's maybe 4 years. Yeah, so there was this guy who was employed who's been oiling the track. Probably he was being paid the minimum wage, like £7, £8 an hour. And he was giving specific instructions that you will have to put maybe 500 mil on every meter or something. And the guy was doing that in the beginning. It got to a point he realized that even when he puts the 500 mil on a meter, there is still so much noise. So he started putting 1,000 on a meter, yeah, at his own well. And actually, at the end of the year, London Transport found out that the cost of replacing, or they became very profitable. Yeah, became very profitable. They didn't know where the profitability was actually coming from. Check their books. What they could find really was that the time it takes for them to replace tracks is actually being extended. And upon investigation, they found out it's because the guy was putting so much oil on the system. So when he left, they were back to the everyday replacing tracks for every 2 years or something. And the question then is, you got this guy doing the oil work, he was being paid £6. Somebody is paid £150,000 being the chief executive. Whose work is much more strategic to the organization in terms of its profitability? Is it the chief executives? Is it the managers? Or the guy on the tracks, probably from Zimbabwe, an asylum seeker who is being paid £7, and he's the one actually keeping the company profitable? That is why the stories of the little people is important. That is why we'll have to go back to the basics to talk to these people, because for a very long time, their voices have been subjugated, objective discourse, nobody wants to talk to them because they are cleaners, because they are security men, because they clean the streets, they are prisoners or whatever. But sometimes those are the places that we could get new ideas to drive management research to move forward. So when we're talking about microstoria here, it's about the variation of skills. So what we've done here is to vary the skills that we normally use, whereas we always go for the upper echelons or go for the meso level or the lower level managers and stuff. Now we've gone down to the ordinary people in the organization. Yeah, it's just like we want to talk about innovation and stuff. We talk about Steve Jobs and so on, yeah, as if he's the greatest of the great. But the reality is you go in there, there is somebody there who is actually doing the job. He's the one making all the designs, but nobody is speaking to. It is time we speak to these people, because until we get to speak to them, we cannot leverage the creativity that these people create so much in the case where Steve Jobs is no longer around. How do we get to know the stories of these little people? So we're coming down the organization. Yeah, if within the organization, we're moving away from the managers and stuff to ordinary people. And if we go outside the organization, we are not going for the elite man, the MPs and whatever to solve our problems. Yeah, we want to go to the marketplace to talk to women, yeah, who are selling there to tell us how we should manage the economy. Maybe that is what we should do. Right, so what this microstoria does is it calls into question what we call grand narratives. So what are some of the grand narratives? Think of it. South Africa independence, yeah, from apartheid. Who is the hero? Who is the one who really said Mandela? And everybody talks about Mandela. Nobody can challenge this. Let's talk about Asante Mine. Who really got us the golden stool? Who really got us Asante Mine? Oh, Osei Tutu. Oh, Komfo Anokye. Really? These are the grand narratives. What about the story of the market women? Yeah, those people who were at the battlefront. Those people who were serving in the palaces. Yeah, those people who were sending letters to the battlefront. Their stories need to be heard. Otherwise, the stories can never be complete. So it's a kind of a challenge to these grand narratives that we've been made to consume. It comes from a postmodernist perspective, where we're challenging, taking for granted assumptions. This is the story, it's massive. Yeah. So Asante Mine was founded by Osei Tutu, Komfo Anokye, golden stool. Yeah. There was somebody in there who probably we sacrifice on that day to get the golden stool down here. We have to look into his story. So it's a challenge to this grand narrative. The advantage it does too is to explore what we call the middle ground between these grand narratives. So you've got these grand narratives at the top, and sometimes you've got the very low level, and it tells you to explore in between. What's actually happening in between? Before Komfo Anokye conjured for the stool to come down, what actually happened before? Was somebody sacrificed? Did they have to do something? Did the Osei Tutu actually call him to tell him to give him something to serve as a symbol for Asante Mine? Did we ask for that? What was the conversation that led to that fateful day where they have to organize the Durbar for him to do the incantation or so on and so forth? Until we get all these stories, yeah, we cannot have a full story of what actually happened. But for a very long time, history, we're talking about the endpoint, Otumfuo, Osei Tutu, yeah, and Asante Mine, and the stool came down and nobody knows in between. So microstoria help us to fill in between. So in the case of microstoria, we can then go to the Obahema and speak to her. We get a bit of her story, put it in there. Yeah. Then we go to maybe Gabon. Yeah. The story of Koforidua can never be told in full without talking about the Jabin kingdom. Why did our people migrate to Koforidua? It's interesting when they tell you the story behind, and yet still it is still not complete, because we really don't know why they settled at the Achim land, not very close to the Krobo land, why the Achims asked them to move along the Sussex line, why did they have to leave the Ashanti kingdom? It's a convoluted story. And most of the time, all we know is, yeah, we are New Gabon, oh, we are part of the Ashanti kingdom or whatever. Microstoria help us to fill. Yeah, so we got all these great stories in management, Steve Jobs, whatever he did, yeah. Whoever is the founder, Brunel. Brunel is made like a king, yeah. Isambard Brunel is the greatest English engineer ever. No, that's the guy my university is named after. And they talk so much about him. Yes, though nobody talks about his foremen, yeah, and the other people he was working with, the people who were giving him the tools and stuff to work. So it's kind of a postmodernist perspective, which is challenging all those macro history that we know very much. Right. So what are the assumptions that underpins this methodological call, I would say theoretical call? The first one is that there's unitary and universalizing macro history. So when you hear the macro history, yeah, of Nelson Mandela, all we hear is Nelson Mandela fought for against apartheid or whatever. But before Nelson Mandela, there were people who were already fighting. thousands of people have died. But all that we know is the story of Nelson Mandela and Robben Island and so on. So we have this unitary and universalizing macro history, which sometimes is untenable because you think about it. Mandela couldn't do it alone. He's just a single man. Yeah, there's no way he did. What about the story of Steve Biko? What about those guys? It's just like the same case of Ghana, where these days we've got the Nkrumah and the Danko Busia people, yeah, no longer Founders Day or whatever. They want to bring the story of other people in. I'm an Nkrumahist, I'm against that Danko Busia, whatever, but the reality is it's important. Actually, when they started talking about the Danko Institute, what Danko did, and you got people talk, otherwise most of us, we didn't know about Danko and Co. Meanwhile, they were the guys who actually started fighting for Ghana. They built the UGCC, they brought in Nkrumah here. That story needs to be told. So you got this massive unitary, universalized macro history that the CPP guys, Kwesi Pratt and Co, don't want anybody to challenge. No, we are not stupid. We have to know what the others did so that we can fill in the history. Because Nkrumah didn't just jump from England or whatever and come to Ghana to fight for independence. What actually happened before. So that is the idea or the call for assumption. The second is what we call the abstract formal theories. So massive, most of our theories are driven by this positivistic paradigm where there is always cause and effect, abstract sometimes, and very much rooted in Western philosophical ideas, to the extent that whatever we have learned here, yeah, is termed as yeah, think of plant medicine and whatever we've been using here. But people will tell you some 100, 500 years ago, our grandfathers were living without chloroquine and paracetamol, but they still live with mosquitoes. So how did they live? Are you telling me the knowledge that they used to cure those diseases are not tenable because of Western medicine? Yeah, so clearly what we're doing is we're bringing in structured, which are not tested. So you can see here, what I'm saying is abstract formal and grand narratives, which are event structured. So event structured, but they do not hold up when tested against concrete reality of small lives. And so small life, those people living in Yendi somewhere, some 500 years ago, they had just a native doctor. How do they cure themselves and so on? It is microhistory that will help us to understand that. The great man history that totalizes little man history. I've mentioned this several times. So Steve Jobs, great man, Nelson Mandela. So all the little men who were involved, nobody talk about them. Yeah, we talk about the AFRC, Rawlings regime and all that. The reality is Rawlings is as crazy as me. Yeah, the person who was actually ruling the country was not going to do. Until somebody tells you the other side of the story. Everybody tells you Rawlings is a strong man, Rawlings. But those who work in the PNDC, they will tell you it was Nakunedu who was ruling the country. And now we actually know. She's such a formidable woman, but even our culture here doesn't allow us to give credence to women. So whatever she was doing, think about the 31st Labour movement, how she was able to organize. She was the backbone of the NDC those days. And we have to talk about these people. It cannot just be the great man alone, yeah? So when we want to talk about the Rawlings history or whatever, it can't be the great man because it tends to totalize the little people, but those little people also matter. And it renders local ways illegitimate. So we all know, the more you go to school and you learn a lot more, you tend to not believe whatever we do in our local practices. So everything is rendered illegitimate, from everything is declared demonic. Yeah, the pastors, the witches, and everybody becomes a witch, and all those witches we think it doesn't work, and so on and so forth. What we are doing here for microhistory is to bring all these stories back to help us understand our society much more better. Because the reality is you tend to ignore our local ways of knowing, then you rely on those formal theories and stuff to run our economy and so on. That is why we are struggling. So the World Bank will come in and tell you to privatize water here, yeah, and all those kind of stories. Look, we've got Etiwa Forest, which for a very long time, we have our own funny stories about Etiwa. You don't go in there on Tuesday and you don't cut a tree, whatever. And now everybody think it's crazy. Why, when people go in there, cut down all the trees, and what we have, massive deforestation. So the idea of not going there on Tuesday and all it seems stupid to us, those local ways of knowing. But in reality, it is those local ways of knowing that had preserved the environment, that have preserved that forest, of which today we don't have again, because we think formal theories, whatever, is much better, and that we are exploiting our environment, destroying them. That is why we cannot render all those local practices, local ways of knowing as illegitimate. We have to go back to our roots sometimes to learn a bit more, to understand why is it that the villagers are saying you can't go to sea on Tuesday? Are they crazy? We need more fish or whatever. There is a reason. These fishermen were going 7 days a week. They needed a bit of rest and so on. And there was no way you could get them to understand that they can't go on Tuesday. So we tell you Manuata will be on there. Yeah, so you don't have to go. Is there a way of bringing back some of these local ways of knowing this kind of stories back into management life, into the way we manage? And that will mean going back to speak to people who have been subjugated, whose voices nobody wants to speak to. And surprisingly, within the academy, we are turning back to this little people nobody cared about. And we've got lots of those people in this country. We've got lots of those people in the South here, which means you can do a lot more research that I cannot do. You have access to so many people. You could study both for entrepreneurship purposes, for leadership, and we will see in a second. We will look at some of those people in a second here. So these are some of the principles. So what we're doing here is placing small units of research within a larger context. So I'll give you an instance. Recently, we were doing some work on migrants. So there's massive statistics which shows that migrants seldom get into professional occupations in Britain. So you have doctors who become security men. I have a friend who was a dentist here, joined the nurse, the wife who was a nurse. And when he came in, but I was a student, I said, hey, boy, if you want to pass the exam, the first thing you have to do is, boy, you have to be a security man. So I was a security guard. Now I got to the job as a security guard as well, a home medical doctor. So he was a spy killer. So we're all doing the security. The idea is for him to get the money to write they call the exam, is it PLAB? And that exam cost £5,000. So he wrote it 2-3, he couldn't pass. He went to Glasgow to do a master's degree. One day he just came to say, David, I'm going. So he came back. Meanwhile, we've got thousands of vacancies in the UK looking for doctors. So how come this guy couldn't get in? Well, he couldn't pass the exam. The reality is that exam that I'm talking about, you've got the pass rate is probably, well, the people who write those exams are foreigners. If you were trained in the UK, you don't have to write that, or in the European Union. And those foreigners, think about it. Every Indian doctor wants to go to England. Every Nigerian doctor wants to go. Every Ghanaian doctor wants to go. So on average, in a year, imagine a number of people writing these exams, and it's £5,000. And I bet you the pass rate is around 2%. You will not pass. When will be our pass, our being brutal. You will not pass. It's not that the Ghanaian or the Nigerian or the Indian guy is daft. We've got very good training here. So recently they decided, the Royal Society for Physicians decided to investigate this because they thought it's too bad. They wanted to know why people were failing so much. Because these people are not daft. They've passed their medical exams in their countries and they are practicing, and they come to England and everybody's failing. So when they went to check, what they found was that the exam had 2 or 3 parts, and one of the parts was kind of a practice section, practical interview, kind of. So what they do is it's kind of a mock. You will be in a consulting room, then they will invite a doctor, a patient will come in, and you have an assessor sitting there watching your interaction with the patient. And the typical Ghanaian, when you come in, good afternoon, madam, good afternoon. Can you have a seat? What's wrong with you? Then they say, oh, my head, okay, paracetamol. Thank you very much, bye-bye. Yeah, that's how we work, very typical. Indians, Nigerians, the English guys. When you enter an Englishman's surgery, you enter, good afternoon, he would, good afternoon, sir, are you okay? Oh, have a seat. How was the weather when you were coming? Oh, David, are you sure you belong to this particular surgery? Oh, yes, my name is on there. Oh, would you like a cup of tea? And the doctor will go and get you a cup of tea. Then, oh, David, have you got AIDS? I say, yeah. Oh, it was terrible this morning, the traffic, isn't it? I say, oh, it was. So how are you feeling today? No, he's going to have all this kind of problem. And so what is happening is you've got a guy who is assessing, and his mental models, his frames, everything is British. So he expects you that when you receive a patient, you should be asking him about the weather. Nonsense. So everybody will fail. Everybody. So until they came down to speak to these people and went to observe what was happening in the consulting rooms, these people were failing and failing and failing. Now the pass rate has come up a bit. There are huge issues that need Microstoria to unpack. There was this Kenyan professor at Nottingham. Joseph, you remember he was recently on the BBC. He's been applying for the Royal Society of Chemistry funding for the past 20 years or whatever. He's never gotten even 2 pence. That is the Royal Chemical Society for you. Yeah, then everybody goes, oh, we have to do a review and so on and so forth. So this is massive anti-narrative. When you go in there, you want to capture the existential condition of people, their situated life, what is it that they do? You want to understand the research subjects. So when we're doing this work on migrants, we wanted to understand how or why so many of them were not getting into professional occupations. And we went for Microstoria. And so Microstoria here is a bit different because the reality is if you go online to check why do migrants don't get jobs in the UK, skilled migrants, they will tell you, oh, qualifications are not, because most of them are overqualified, isn't it? Every single car park attendant in London from Nigeria has got a master's degree. Yeah, overqualified, you know. So 2, language problems. 3, you don't have cultural capital. 4, yeah, you are there's 5, discrimination. So everything is there. So what is it that we wanted to say? That is new. So we said we are coming through Microstoria. We want to hear the stories of little people. And little people, what we wanted to do is to understand those who have been able to get into professional occupations, go to them, try to speak to them, and understand their stories. How did they get there? Yeah, that should help us to theorize why so many people are not getting in there. So that's the point of Microstoria. So here you go, those professionals who have made it. So we had professors, we had different, it's published in the International Journal of Human Resource Management. It's called Moving On Up. Yeah, Moving On Up, careers of minorities in the professions. And you go in there and people tell you their stories. When we develop a model, calling some place Johnny Just Come. So you come in, Johnny Just Come. You know that music, Nigerian stuff, Johnny Just Come, then you step on an escalator. It's a moving one, you don't have to jump on, it's just finishing your PhD, isn't it? If you don't get on the research escalator, it just moves, you can't get on again. Or when you are on and they start rejecting all your papers and you jump off, you can't get back on. And that is how it works. You need someone to sponsor you. It's not about mentorship. You are a black guy, whatever, you want to succeed, you need one white guy to pick you up. And say, I want to sort this guy out. Every single successful black person needed a sponsor. You will never know. It's not a mentorship. A sponsor is different from a mentor. A mentor is helping you to do your CV and all those kind of stuff. A sponsor is the person who goes somewhere, there's a vacancy, and they ask him, oh, do you want that? You say, no, I know this boy who can actually do a very good job. Then he puts your name forward. That is a sponsor. A sponsor is the one who will call you and say, oh, there is this course you have to go to. You know, recruiters contact him to apply for it. They say, no, I'm not ready, but there is this particular guy you want to go for. And that is what you need to get on that escalator. Then we got the very last and we call the peasant's lap, where you move up and you have to support other people to also join. So the story of Microstoria is to get people to tell their situated story. You capture that in what I will call the existential condition of the research subject. What is their condition? Which is a bit different. So you want to write about Asafo market, women entrepreneurship or whatever, and you sit in your bedroom, send questionnaires. Those women there cannot fill the questionnaires properly. Yeah, the best thing is to go there and hear their stories, those little stories. So these are the people the World Bank will not come to speak to. Yeah, these are the people the Ghana Statistical Service will not come to speak to. These are the people, the economists and all those guys who are making the decisions will not speak to. And your job is to give those polyphonic voices a voice. Yeah, you providing a platform for them to tell their stories in an unexpurgated fashion, because you're getting them to speak up and they will tell you those little stories that get etched on your mind. Yay! So what's the focus here? So whenever we're talking about microstoria, we are no longer interested in elites. So we are moving away from the idea of top management team managers, and we are going for the non-elites. Yeah, or Pambo. You see, you coming down to the market human, you're going really down. And this new focus is because of the gap, or kind of the fight between the subordinate and the elite and the subordinated. There is massive pressure, massive stuff. Fights and stuff going on between top executive teams, managers, and the union people, yeah, who are normally the elites, yeah. So there's a clash of the subordinates and the elites, and those people who are doing the real work, who are asking for more money, yeah. Go to all the British airports and the European airports now. So many planes are being landed. They are not moving because they are not finding people to work. Yeah, the people want more money again because of COVID, because so many of them were laid off. Now we want them back, and it's very complicated. There's so much clashes between the subordinated, and in every society, everybody is speaking up against the elite. In Ghana, everybody will tell you how the politicians have stolen all the money and they've left us, whatever. So there's and how do we break that gap? It is through microstories, so that people will know the situated condition of these people, especially those at the lower end of the organizational hierarchy and so on. There's been excluded narratives of these people for a very long time, and I've identified some of them here. So indigenous people, nobody wants to speak to them. Women in particular, yeah, nobody cares about them. Ethnic minorities, witches, yeah, nobody wants to talk about witches, because after all, the philosophy or whatever that drives witchcraft is inconsistent with modern science. Day laborers, peasants, charlatans, the nobodies, the Berliners in France, or they are all disenfranchised. So in microstoria, we are very much interested not in the great man narratives, the great man stories, the Osei Tutu and Okonfo Anoche, whatever. We are interested in the Abrafo, those people who carried the stool, those people who touched it, those people who were in there on that day, those people who can tell us why we had the Durbar, those people who can tell us what really the stool means to them. It's not just the people looking after the stool. That is the story of the little people. That is how we can break those bridges and get to know why they supported the stool coming down, why they revered the stool, because they were promised on the day that in as much as you are part of Asante, you will never go hungry. Probably that is why you just have to be subjugated to the stool. And today, you are hungry. Until we go back to get those stories being told, then those people will continue to be subjugated for a very long time. So it's history from the bottom to the top. Most history is at the top, coming to the bottom. So we are now moving from, so we call it proso, is it proso, whatever. Right. Remember, microstoria is all about stories, isn't it? Every story has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. And we are telling the stories of these little people. And if we are telling the story of these little people, especially in papers and stuff, how should these stories be structured? In structuring these stories, I pick on the work of classical rhetorics based on Kineve. So he argues that for a story to appeal to people, for these micro stories to appeal to people, for them to change course, to change policy, to support those people at the micro level, that story needs to fit in, will have to appeal to the logic. So we've got the logos, which is logical appeal. The story has to be logical. You have to tell a story that is logical. Two, the story have to be ethical. So the reason why I'm telling you to look after those women who are selling at Asafo Market or whatever, and do not despise them because don't think they are not wise and they are selling, they are making 20 cedis or whatever. The reason is that on ethical grounds, these are people who are part and parcel of our societies. They are our mothers, they are our sisters, yeah, they are our wives. And that's morally, we have a responsibility to support. So the story should be told on moral grounds. It should be logical. If we support women, they say, if you train a man, you train one person or whatever. If you train a woman, yeah, you educate a nation. So logically, it is wise for us to engage in those people to help them, because if that woman can do her trading very well, then she's likely to send the children to school, she can pay for the fees. So it's logical. And most importantly, we have to appeal to emotions. We have to tell the story in an honest, spaghetti fashion. You think about it sometimes when we're doing all this political advice or something and somebody comes in, you really don't want to vote for Akufo-Addo. You really hate this SHS because you think it's not well structured. But a very poor lady comes on television and appeals to your emotion and tells you she had 4 children. You know, the husband died 2 years ago. The first 2 couldn't go to school because she couldn't afford it. Today, those other 2 are now in secondary school. She's managed to even send the other ones in there. And last year, the second born is going to Kumasi Technical University, and he's doing national. And it appeals to your emotions, trying to tell you that, look, you are sitting on the ivory tower, so you think that some people can pay, some people cannot pay. But the reality is, well, if they are not discriminating, there is no way of finding out those who can afford and so on in this country, and that we are paying for everybody. It's not fair. But on the other hand, the policy is taking people out of poverty. And that is why they will bring that woman to you to appeal. So that is why we will put the cameras on those women to appeal, to tell their stories. And that story has to be emotional. Most importantly, it has to be ethical, and it has to be logical. So the emphasis on the lived experiences. So how those people live, the everyday situated practices, how do they survive, and so on. It's a commitment to microanalysis. So we are not interested about the macro. Yeah, we are not talking about the economy. We want to understand people's experience of the economy. Yeah, down there. We are not talking about interest rates and stuff. We want to know how the person manages to get food on the table every single day. So very micro level, and it provides new possibilities to rewrite gender history in particular, to retell the stories of women who have been subjugated for a very long time. We challenge the dogma and say, look, at their contribution, these are the stories of the little people. Oh, okay. So I've got some work that we've done on Microstoria recently. So the first one is on Barefoot Entrepreneurs, IMAS 2012. That's where we picked the idea from. Then we did some work on service nepotism, which was published in 2015. We did some work on the migrant experiences in cosmopolitan places, 2017. Cross-state mobility, European nationalized countries. So those Ghanaians who have gone to live in Germany, gotten a German passport and moved to England, they become third country nationals and wanted to understand their experiences. So the stories of these people. Why will somebody leave Germany, a place whose social system is much more benevolent, to come and live in England and so on? Then we've got a career journeys of skilled migrants, which I was telling you earlier. So those are the papers that I've done on Microstoria for now. Then I've got some PhD students who are working on Microstoria. One of them is finished, Amit, bouncing back to venture again. Then I've got a Ghanaian girl who is doing getting in and getting on, careers of visually impaired people, so blind people, how they get into professional occupations. So we wanted to hear their stories. Yeah. Then there's one on Pragmatic 10, those Africans who go to join the British Army. You are mad. You'll be taken to Iraq the next day. So why do these people join? We wanted to hear their stories, isn't it? Everybody will say because they want a British passport. Yes, they want that, but there are other means of getting the passport. So why will somebody put their lives, everything online, when they know very well the next day they were being sent to Afghanistan? So all those Ghanaians and Nigerians who joined the British Army between 2007, when the military covenant was changed, up to 2010, when the coalition government came in to change everything. We're speaking to these people to understand why they joined, because most of them have no military history in their family at all. Then we've got the careers of female award-winning scientists. That's a Wege girl, yeah, who is studying how early career scientists actually who have won prizes. So there's a prize for Elsevier, for all those women in sciences who are working in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, in developing countries, who do groundbreaking work. And she's interviewing those women to hear their stories, how they manage to win those prizes and get on the top. So lots of work is being done on Microstoria, and I've got one on UK visa overstayers, somebody wants to do for a PhD coming up soon, and the legging up there, then I spoke about. Right, so this is it. Probably I thought if I put up some images, then you may get to understand Microstoria very well. So If you think about the first picture there's a woman packing bottles, and I'm sure we see lots of them here as well. So whenever we're talking about entrepreneurship, nobody will talk to this woman, will they? People want to talk to those young people who have come off from university, who are starting businesses, new apps, and so on and so forth. But the reality is, this woman is also an entrepreneur. She's sitting on a rubbish dump somewhere in New Delhi, in India. She's picking bottles. That is what he sells. She sells potentially. She's looking after her children in university. And that is what we refer to as barefoot entrepreneurs. So totally barefoot. She's got nothing. And we've got lots of those barefoot entrepreneurs here. So necessity entrepreneurs, which we can study to tell their stories. Until we listen to their stories, we will never be able to improve the livelihood of these people. So we sit in the lecture theaters here and we come up with solutions for how to improve those entrepreneurship, whatever. It's about going there to understand their situated practice, to speak to these people. What do they do? How do they get into entrepreneurship? The stories, remember? It's the stories of the little people, the people nobody cares about. It's a postmodernist perspective. We are challenging grand narratives. So you got the woman in the market selling tomatoes and stuff, who we have to speak to. So if you want money from the World Bank yesterday and today, we're talking about projects and funding and stuff. When you go to the World Bank to tell them you want to do a project on the economy, whatever, nobody will give you any money. If you want their money, tell them the stories of the little people. Yeah? So that's what I started earlier on saying, that the British Academy, these are the people we are giving money to. So think about the women within the global value chains. The people are telling so much stories about the global value chains, isn't it? So global value chains being disrupted. And I want you to just think about the cocoa value chain, for example. So much stories to tell in there. Those women working in there, some of them serving as slaves, those children working in there, we want to hear their stories. So there is big money going from cocoa farm to chocolate projects that people are making money from, because they want to hear the story, because it's part of gender studies, it's part of emancipation and all those kind of poverty alleviation and stuff. But the emphasis is on those women who are working on those farms. How do we support them? What is the role they are playing in there? Those women who never get some of the chocolate to eat. And the reality is more than 70% of the people working on these farms are women. How can we improve their livelihoods and stuff? Microstoria, we put the microscope on these people. I want to hear their stories. We're talking about workers. You said we are workers, not criminals. So those people, domestic servant. There's a guy in Pakistan, David, Joseph. There's a guy in Pakistan who's been publishing organization studies, and she's been writing on maid servants. Yeah, have you seen that? It's quite interesting. And I'm kind of thinking, whenever I see that, we're kind of thinking, oh, some Ghanaians should start writing about those girls going. The last time I came to Ghana, I used Ethiopia Airlines, and it was incredible when I was coming. Actually, when I was going back, when I was coming, it was a bit dark, so I didn't see a lot. When I was going back, the plane was leaving here around 12 o'clock. And at the airport, when we were sitting waiting to enter the plane and looking at the passengers, I was just shocked. There are 17-year-old, and they were girls, young boys. I just couldn't imagine. You know, so many of them with their bags. And so I asked one of the ladies, where are these people going to? And she said, they are all going to Lebanon. Then I shouted, Lebanon! Somebody's going to Lebanon today. It's just incredible. I can't imagine. This is a country which is almost near collapse. And you are leaving Ghana to go to Lebanon. So I got into chat with the lady. Said, oh, there are posters in town. People are going to Bahrain, Lebanon. They will all come back in 2 years. They'll be beaten. And it's just quite incredible. So I started looking at this, and I saw that some were being even repatriated back from Kuwait. And these are the stories of the little people. Who is telling these stories? You don't expect a British academic to go and do that research. And you are the people here. You can get access to the people. So if you put in a funding application, you want to tell the stories of this return maid servants. Incredible. Because there's this Pakistani guy. He's written about 3 or 4 papers, all in organization studies. And that is what actually brought my mind to this, because he writes very well. And he's talking about maid servants in Pakistan. You know, the Islamic way of living sometimes can be a bit problematic in Pakistan when it comes to the way they treat some of the maids there. And of course, this is a developing country. Institutions are very weakened. I found it very interesting until I got to realize that thousands of girls are going back from Ghana, going to other countries. And these are some of the stories you could tell. And they are all domestic workers and so on. They are not criminals. You got the migrants, loads of money being put into migrant research, millions of people dying, yeah, in the how do you call it, in the sea, in Libya and stuff. Stop a bit. And actually, I have actually started working in this area. I've got a cousin who just finished his PhD in Germany, and he did his work on artisanal mining. Fascinating. So we'll be doing stuff on gender in artisanal mining and stuff. Galamsey, there's a lot to write about. But it's not about telling us about Galamsey and the police went there, the Galamsey and nobody, and they were arrested and the government put a moratorium and nobody's interested in. They want to see the livelihoods. Is Galamsey changing, how do you call it, rural areas or rural, how is it impacting on rural economies? How is it impacting on the health of women, gendered mining, those people who working in there? How has Galamsey, we started off as a socially accepted kind of occupation, has been stigmatized now to the extent that if you tell somebody you do Galamsey, you are almost like an armed robber. Yeah, but this was something that was accepted in the 80s and in the 90s. So remember in the 80s, people would come from the north to do all this Galamsey work. Then they tried to formalize it because they thought they could get some taxes from them. Then they became small businesses. The next thing, entrepreneurs realized that there are opportunities. One to me and Co. bought machines, started going there. So no longer were they just mining with pickers. You know, before that it was just pickers. How many hectares can you destroy? But today they were now going in with machines, which means that they could destroy a lot more. The Chinese came in, they saw an opportunity. They also went in there. In the end, it became very violent, isn't it? They were killing themselves and so on. Then all of a sudden, the environmental campaign started. People were saying they were destroying water bodies. People were showing it was those stories that got the government to put a moratorium on the whole stuff. But people were showing videos of Densu River being polluted and so on. The little story of those people in the villages telling you they don't have drinking water and so on. Yeah, that is what led to the moratorium. Then all of a sudden, you will realize that a country that we've never really cared about the environment so much, a country that we've never really cared about what people actually do to our river bodies and stuff. Today, if you tell somebody, when I was a young boy, there's a lot of Galamsey in Akwetia. So Kadakwetia. So I had friends there. I go there. Charlie to Galamsey, they were with motorbikes and their cocaine gins. We loved them. They had all the girls. They had all the money. Yeah, but today, if you tell somebody that you were a Galamsey boy, yeah, so you can see that's an occupation that started off as a socially accepted, practice, whatever. It's now been stigmatized, yeah, over time, over 20 years. And there's possibility for you to track this stigmatization of occupations. There's a lot of work to do in this Galamsey area. You got children in there, lots of them. I think this one from the United States. This is the Texas border. I'm sure you saw that on CNN recently, those Haitians who are trying to get into America, and you've got horses chasing them. We want to hear the stories of these little people. Those are the little stuff that you do here. The British man cannot really get access to some of these places. They don't really understand the terrain, and it is you putting in the application for the funding and stuff. This is a technical university. There's more, you can get much more expertise, chemical engineering guys and all those guys coming in. You form a team. It's a bit different. You have massive strength. And like I said earlier on, there's lots of funding, which has been ring-fenced for this kind. Most of the money is going into this kind of, I'll call them funny stuff. These are the stories that shook people. It makes them, shake their heads and think something is happening, and these are the areas we will be looking at. So that's Microstoria. I've got my man here. Earlier when I was telling you about Obofoy and all those crazy, I love them, especially Opambo. So man, he's exciting. He's exciting. And recently I was just going through the Journal of Business Venturing, those in entrepreneurship. This is one of the biggest journal in entrepreneurship, massive. If I should get 3 papers in this journal in the next 4 years, my career will be sorted. You don't have to do anything again. I'll just sleep. Yeah, and there was a special issue called, and you can see toward the theological turn in entrepreneurship, how religion could enable transformative research in entrepreneurship. Remember, for a very long time, everything has been positivistic, everything has been scientific methods. Nobody is talking about religion in entrepreneurship, but we know religion is so important. But religion belongs to this micro-story a bit. You know, it's subjugated. Nobody wants to talk about it. You can't theorize kind of religion in entrepreneurship. So for a very long time, you've been pushed back, and there are opportunities here. And I want to think about the linkages between religion, business, and the new charismatic 10, all those kind of stuff. And it's not in Africa alone. In the emerging world, people are commanding billions. This is a huge industry. What can we learn from them? And that is what they were calling for, a new 10 in entrepreneurship on religion. So you can see the other guy is an Indian guy. They call him Baba something. He's got millions of followers, and he sells medicine and soap and all those kind of things. He's probably the second richest guy in India now. All those followers, that crazy guy. And it's kind of thing, why do these people follow all these guys? And we need to understand potentially there are ways to get people to think twice, but great opportunities in this area to do micro-story research. I'm probably going to leave this later on. This is for those who are very much interested in theorizing using microstoria. So I was thinking through the ontology, the epistemology, bit of axiology, and the typical methods that you use. So microstoria is very much qualitative oriented. It relies on stories. So people cannot tell you stories through questionnaires. You have to go and listen to them. And it's about managing and organizing. So how do that expose power relations and question dominant views? So the idea of microstoria is to challenge, grand narratives, dominant views, to say, oh, it's not just about Konfuanochi and Osei. No, it's not just about Nelson Mandela alone. Yeah, there are other people there. It's not just about talking to the nurses and the doctors. It's also a voice down there about the cleaner, which we can hear of to help us resolve problems. It's value-constituted research. It's in flux of transformation, so it's not very static. So microstory is always in transformation. Stories do change. It's got beginning, middle, and end, and it keeps flowing. Yeah. So it's much more relational. It relies on relationalism as opposed to methodological individualism. It's about showing truth to be a product of ideology. No credit ideology. You believe in. Yeah. So when somebody doesn't believe in witchcraft and stuff, you will not even theorize it. Yeah. But if you believe that this is something that exists, this is something that you could theorize, then people will want to listen to you. It helps researchers to gain access, and they get embedded in that kind of research context. The researcher becomes part and parcel of the research. And it's about deconstruction of tests. So practically, you are deconstructing tests. People will tell you stories, you transcribe and you deconstruct to find the meanings embedded in the stories that they tell you. It's socially constructed through power relations. It focuses on silences and, of course, repressed meanings and voices. So your role is to give a voice to the subjugated voice. Your role is to tell the story that nobody is telling. Yeah, so we're talking about a value chain. Everybody's thinking about ways of optimizing it, but nobody's talking about those children working in those cocoa farms. Nobody's talking about the work of those women on the cocoa farms on the artisanal skill mining sites, how this artisanal skill mining is impacting rural entrepreneurship and so on. So these are the silences, these are the absences you are shedding light on. You want to tell the story. It's about narratives that are repressed. And of course, they are silenced at the expense of others that are seen to be much more scientific. And finally, you think about it as researcher who's been radically reflexive. So it's about reflecting on our own social milieu. What is it that we do? How we live in our society, the context within which we are embedded, having to theorize it to understand why things work in a particular way. And that is what people want to hear. Like I said earlier on, down to top. So prosopography, the purpose is to elucidate historical position on the level of a very small group. Apparently exceptional. And I think of it in terms of EID. When we talk about EID, how do you call it? EID, Joseph. EID. They keep telling us to do a lot of EID work. It's more about inclusivity. Yeah. So qualitative exploratory is normally an exploratory research. So think of it that way. We can rely on ethnographic interviews where you go into the places of work of people. So if you want to interview that market woman, you don't bring her to your office. You have to sit with her in the marketplace, see how she sells, how she does things. That is when you are able to fill in the gap between what people say they do and what they actually do in practice. Yeah. So that's why we're talking about ethnographic interviews here. So think about it. If somebody asks you, how do you teach? Yeah. You are a lecturer. You say, oh, well, as a lecturer, I'll go to the class and I'll switch on the computer. Then I will get the students to tell them what we are doing for the day. Then I'll start with the basic concepts and yeah, you will be able to explain that. But when I get somebody to follow you, to see how you do teaching, you will realize that what people say they do is different from what they actually do in practice. And the role of Microstoria is to fill that gap between the theory and practice of what people say they do and what they actually do in practice. Because you go to the class and maybe the first thing you have to do is to have a chat with the students who didn't turn up last week. You came up front here, your computer is not working very well. Your slide get corrupted. You may have to go and get a blackboard, start again. Some students are on some aluta out there. You may want to go out there to tell them to keep calm and a bit for you. Then you come back and which is totally different from what you say you actually do. Yeah, right. So it relies on narratology and more on archival document analysis. A bit of the methodological bits when you are doing Microstoria, very much into grounded theory, but because you are relying on narratives, you want to think of it as narrative analysis. So I've got attending, which is very similar to open coding, yeah, in grounded theory research. Then you've got a telling, very much initial coding, which you identify. Then transcribing and analyzing is related to reaching the theoretical categories and the theory development by induction. The theoretical categories is what you use to develop your empirical findings. So it's about theory development by induction as opposed to deduction. Yeah, so very much qualitatively driven. Right, so what are the potentials and possibilities? What makes Microstoria exciting is that number one, it provides you the opportunity to tell the stories of the people you really care about. Yeah. So I care about women in mining areas who are playing with mercury, who are not being given any money at all, yeah, being given very little. They are struggling, and I want to tell their stories. Maybe you are from Takwa Prestia, Huni Valley. There's this Ghanaian boy. He's mad. The boy is in University of Lengam in Hong Kong. He's not finished his PhD. He's written about 40 papers. I saw him on ResearchGate, Atta Holmes. His name is Atta Holmes. Check on him if you want to do anything on artisanal mining. He's not even finished. He's a cracker. So I've been speaking to him, and actually what I realized was that he's from Huni Valley. So he was telling me his story when he finished SSS. He had to stay home for about 4 years because he didn't have money to go to second university. Somebody had to pay for him and all. It's quite exciting. And because of the poverty he experienced there, that is why he's been doing stuff on artisanal mining. His name is Francis Atta Holmes. Yeah. So sometimes you do stuff that excites you, not because it just excites you, but you want to do something to give something back to society. This is society he belonged to, and he's giving something back to them. It's an opportunity to gain access to a hidden population. Most of the time, Microstoria is very interesting when you're talking to a population that is so hidden, but nobody will speak to them. Yeah? Who wants to go and speak to nationalized third country nationals? You wouldn't even think of it. Meanwhile, when we're talking about immigration, when the European, before the Brexit debate in England, everybody was saying immigration is one of the main reasons, and the European immigration, the assumption is that anybody who is from Europe is white. But if you go in to check the statistics, more than 5% of the people walking on the streets of Britain as Europeans were actually not born, or as Europeans holding European passports were not born in Europe. So they were Africans, Nigerians, Indians, or whatever. Yeah. But somebody sees a Polish person or a Lithuanian person, oh, this is all the Europeans. Not. But most of you will see, how do you call it, a Somalia guy walking on the street of Leicester or Bristol, and you think, oh, he's from Somalia. No. You go to speak to him, he said that. Yeah, he's in England as somebody from Norway. So these are the naturalized third country, and they made 5% of the population, very huge. We want to hear the stories of these little people because their experiences are totally different from somebody who is migrating from Africa. Yeah. So naturally, it tells a totally different story. So very hidden population. That is what Microstoria does. So you can pick some people that in Ghana here, nobody's ever thought of them. Yeah, I want to understand. Actually, there was a girl, we reviewed her work 2 years ago. That we will be reviewing her again. She was on the Ghana government scholarship. I'm on their panels where we review those who are doing PhD in the UK. And I took particular interest in her because she was in Cambridge. She is in Cambridge. And what she was doing, she was looking at, how do you call it? Females in technical schools. Those girls who go to technical schools in Ghana. Which is quite exciting. Their experience is going to take. Why will somebody go to a tech? Me what fast be on your 25? No, I'm so the technical school from Buffy. I said technical school there don't call there. That is a story near Kun. That Ben Abe will be technical school where ET1, ET2, ET3, HND. Yeah. So nobody wants to go there. So the story of these girls in those technical schools can be exciting. Those are the stuff that you put together, then TVET, if you don't have any money, they can give you some 20,000 to go and speak to those little girls. We want to understand their experiences. Why would they go to technical schools? A chance to empower the polyphonic voices. Yes, you want to give a voice to these people, but they are subjugated. Yeah, nobody will go to those. Then saying Ayana, a FM station for the to me call Kakrana Momo, Mame Kawasem. Other than that, we never hear of them. Who is going to tell their stories? We have to tell the stories. So those subjugated voices. And the beauty is that you can collect data anywhere, anytime. Just get your ethics clearance in your university, and those people will not hesitate to speak to you. Yeah, it's not as difficult as getting to FM and so on. So this is the very last slide. If you are very much interested in Microstoria, I think it's gone. I'll leave the slides, but we've got loads of slide number. Okay. Yeah, so I've got lots of references here, including some of the papers I've done on Microstoria myself. So, which you can follow up if it's a kind of a methodological tool you want to use as a tutorial and something you want to follow. But the reality is, people are now much more interested in the stories of little people. That is what they will pay you money for. Nobody's interested in you doing research on sodium hydrogen carbonate, doing whatever. Yeah, I keep talking about one of your colleagues, who is my very good friend. We studied together at Ghana. So I went to Accra Poly. He came here, and he was all over the news in the UK because his PhD was on building toilets. Bill Gates, Eric Danso-Boateng, he was from chemical engineering. He's now at least, and it was all over the news. Or the BBC, just because he was building toilets. The toilet is so important here. Yeah, meanwhile, when somebody asks you to, this is the story of the little people here, where there are so many homes, there are no toilets. It's incredible. This is the story they want to hear. This is the kind of stuff they want to pay money for. Yeah, if you want to go to space, galaxy, whatever, you want to do chemistry research here, nobody will speak to you. Yeah, so please, let's go back to the basics. Those are the important stuff, and that is where the money is for research. So thank you very much. I've got something to do this afternoon, so thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any questions?
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's interesting. Yeah, thank you very much. Your presentation has been very exciting.
Thank you.
You have a price. And I'm not the areas. It's one like the singing. But go back to your first observation, like where we have the little.
Oh, Most are for.
I think they are not. They are full movement.
Oh, the pidgin.
Yes. See the first one up there. Somebody like me, 6'8". If you ask me to see that interesting thing inside that with my wrist pain, I imagine what going to my. So my friend here, 550, he will not have problem. What I'm saying is, most people would rather like to look up and see what is up. Is that okay? We are all interested in what is going on. Why are their homes being destroyed? Because we want to put Gargantuan builders there. That's what we are interested in. So it's interesting you are telling me that now the people are interested in the small house than someone else's nation. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. For a very long time, you give the right example. We've been very much interested in Asamoah and his mansions and those big mansions. But the reality is, how many of us will ever go and live in Asamoah's building? Would it impact on livelihoods? No. How many people can be employed? Never get a living there. So if I am going to contrast somebody, think about it, I'm a government and I want to contrast somebody to look into housing policy and stuff. I don't expect you to go and speak to Asamoah, because if you go to Asamoah, he will tell you to build these big mansions where nobody will be living in. Whereas the source of the little people, you will realize that people actually need smaller homes. You don't need big houses to house those people. So the idea here is to go back to the basics. These are the people we've ignored for a very long time. They've become polyphonic voices. Think about the cleaner in the hospital. Yeah, nobody ever thought of speaking to a cleaner because I think the physicians are the ones who have the answer. But that is where, so those people subjugated for a long time, they've not been given opportunity to speak up. That is where the World Bank, and these are the queer, I'll call it weird queer projects, interesting. Think about the work of Bill Gates, which actually led to the funding of Eric. Bill Gates is a very rich man, and he's one of the entrepreneurial philanthropists. He's decided to spend 90% of his wealth before he died. And in doing that, he's decided to choose specific projects that he's going to invest his money in. In an ideal world, what should Bill Gates invest in? You would have thought he would invest in some spacecraft and all those kind of stuff. But he's thinking about humanity. And he said, look, the world population, more than 1/3 of the people on planet Earth do not have a good toilet system. And we would take that for granted. It's serious. Well, go to South Africa, how do you call it? The ships and you know the toilet we use in the funerals when they bring them. That is what they use. They'll pack them. It's incredible. And look at our own homes here. We don't have toilets. And think about how many people die a year just because we don't have toilets. It's incredible. That's why I want to put my money. He thinks of, he's also putting a lot of money in malaria research. They're thinking about the number of children who die every year and stuff. So you want Bill Gates' money, yeah, those kind of money. You don't go to tell Bill Gates that you are developing a new chemical system at Kumasi Poly, which will analyze, how do you call it, the atmosphere in the night or whatever. He won't give you a penny. But if you tell him you want to toilet, it does make sense. Then you are responding to the stories of those little people who need toilets in their home, their health care and stuff, which we never care about because after all, we run in a cash and carry system. It's recent that we have this health insurance, which is already not working very well. So there are more people who die just because they do not have toilet system. It's incredible. So what we're asking for is to go back to the basic research, do something which is context specific, which can actually change livelihoods. Research is all about impact. So if we are in Ghana and we want to do all those kind of blue skies, massive, I see some of the research stuff, people, somebody said we should give all our money to Kantanka to develop. I say, you are mad. This guy doesn't know anything. Oko Indiana got to pass now by Sambola, own manufacturer. You can't manufacture a car, and that is not what we need. Why should we give our monies to rather young physical and fertilizer more na aduane bebre mra krom problem near come never happen. If we can solve the food problem and go, so they put a lot of money in food systems in Africa. There's lots of money in there. Lanternwa systems, food systems, health systems, the ESRC, the UKRI, the how do you call it, the World Bank and stuff, toilet system, sanitation and stuff. That is what they want to. So if we want money, especially as a technical university, those are the kind of stuff you want to do. If you want to go and study organizational culture, nobody will give you any money. It's a huge, at our end, it's becoming the same. I'm in a business school, but I look at some of the stuff I'm doing because I have to get money to fund my research. So that's where the money is. So forget about somewhere, John. Young if coast for no, we need to put money in coast football rather than yeah. Oh yeah, okay. I was saying, man, then you just
Thank you very much.
Come in my way. Okay. So see me, you know. Where do we start from here?
Presentation of story.
Yeah.
Research. Very good works with minds. Very interesting. But so much yesterday, mentioned that almost you know, you spoke about research.
Watching,
you know, I think that's also very interesting things, you know, that will also be done, also depending on how you contextualize, you know. So, for instance, it's a very not to understand in Nigeria.
in Sierra Leone, yeah.
And so, whatever work that is done, the application,
Okay. Oh, okay. Only.
Second point is one of the research, you know, it's much capacity. That's the focus rather than us. Here, we have so many of our analysts most of them, the reason why some journals is because we don't write to the standard that is required or that is expected. So when I heard about this workshop and I saw your profiles and all that, I was expecting that, you know, I'll find myself maybe in some workshop setting where we can have like group tasks with some activities, you know, sort of exposing us to how to write, for instance, the introduction of a research paper. What are the key items that should go into every paragraph that is developed under an introduction? For literature review, what are the key things that should be considered in writing the literature review? The analysis aspects, because that's mostly for a number of us. And even if you are supposed to use like a software, MassQDA and NVivo and all these other software that are coming up in qualitative analysis, how do you go about it? How do you use it? So I don't know if there will be some other workshop in the future, but I think that this should also, you know, be the focus. And then in this school as well, we do not only have people in the social sciences, but we have colleagues in the health sciences. I realized that most of the presentations are focused on mostly qualitative kind of research.
a number of our colleagues in the health sciences, they will probably just be here to make up the numbers, but truly in doing research work that really benefits them and the kind of presentations that I have heard here, I think that many of them may not have benefited to maybe compared to some of us in the social sciences. And so maybe for future workshops, maybe we could have someone who is maybe into quantitative, research work, and who is also mostly doing research work in the health and natural sciences, and then somebody also within the social science qualitative research. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you very much. I'm going to prepare one after the other. So we're going to the current half was about where to get
and jollof. My problem with it is much more with the positioning, and you again mentioned it about writing papers and stuff. So think about it. The white paper, all they're talking about was the bioactive substances in the leaves that colors the rice, isn't it? It was not about wache. You get the point. So in positioning that paper, if you were a reviewer or you were an editor of any good journal and somebody comes in and says wache in the title, I would think you are mad. Yeah, I want you will have to go for that plant and say, yeah, I'm looking at this bioactive substance or whatever. In the paper somewhere, you will be writing about wache. It's just like what Joseph said in the morning. Most African scholars have fantastic ideas, but they take the context as a contribution, which can never be. So he starts the paper and tells, okay, so he's going to write a paper about market women and microcredits or something. Yeah. So that's microcredit is when women, whatever, go and they are given credit at a low, whatever. In Ghana, there are 5,000 market women, and there are in Ghana which have 15,000 microcredits, and they go in, 15% of them do their businesses and what. This paper explains why so many women are not able to repay their microcredits or whatever. You are mad. I would take the paper out. Meanwhile, you have a very interesting story to tell. What I want you to start with is to tell what microcredit is, why microcredit is important for facilitating markets and poverty alleviation and stuff. Tell me about the gap in the literature that we don't know. That's how people are not able to pay back. A lot of literature suggests that people are able to pay back. Talk a bit about the gender issue. Tell us about your contribution. Tell us about how the work that you've done, how you did the work. Yeah, so the methodological bit, how the work was done. Then tell us about the contribution. Then you go on to the literature review the literature. Then in the methodology section, you provide context and settings and tell me the research was developed within the context of Ghana, an emerging economy in Africa with a population of 15 million, whatever, 70% of them being women. That's excellent. Then you can sell the paper to anybody in the world. You are theorizing people not being able to pay, their microfinances. So it's not about Ghana not being able. Ghana doesn't mean anything. So in that paper again, you will see the person in the title. So the title, women microcredit, the impact of credit microcredit in Asafo market or in Ghana. Come on. You find something very nice. And it comes back to the stuff you were saying, that you were thinking this workshop would have been organized in a different format, where we'll be talking about writing papers. And we do lots of these workshops at the British Academy. And I've got lots of materials so that we could organize that. We had a problem. Obviously, we are from business schools, and there's very little I can say about engineering and other stuff, but this has to happen. It's a starting. We'll be definitely doing stuff in the future. We want to hear from you. So typically, the British Academy, for example, every year, because I'm in charge of capacity, I run all the events. So at the British Academy, we've got I've got about 15 talks coming next year. Last year we had about 20 of them. I've had over 500 or so, I would say, probably about 2,000 people attending last year. It's open all over the world. Normally, you just have to register with the academy. It's £20 or so as a member. Then you can have access to what the beauty is everything now is online. Yeah, so everything is online, 2 hours on a Friday. You can listen to, we can do stuff. And yeah, the paper writing, yes, we will have to organize proper workshops where it will be specific sometimes, and we can work together. I'll be speaking to Eric as well. I think he's doing amazing at least, and he can support the chemical engineering department better. And hopefully, I'm sure we can. With you, it's very difficult. Think of me too as a facilitator. When you have to talk to somebody from engineering and other places, you cannot give off your best. It's very difficult to do that. But hey, we have to start from somewhere, and that is why we have to talk in general terms, micro story and writing a paper and all those kind of stuff. So in the future, there will or there should be, and then we are very much open to collaboration. And in particular, I'm sure we are going to have a chat with the business school later on and see what we can do to facilitate a lot more visiting professors to come in here. We have a responsibility to pay, especially me. I've benefited so much for the Polytechnic, I have to pay back. So we're very happy to do so. Joseph.
And just to add what David said, many of the things that we have indicated are they are transferable. Yet they are not just pertaining to business school or to social science. For I can speak for myself, I have papers in engineering journals, but I'm not an engineer. I have papers in transportation research, and David is currently doing a specialization for
IEEE
engineering management. So and he's done one before in engineering management. So a lot of these things, these skills, they are transferable. You can move them between these different disciplines. And I think we apply them. Getting good with the Spanish. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, maybe the other thing we have to really concentrate on will be the farm benefits. If you think of
that is the biggest opportunity I see here. There is scaling our yeah, there is a lot of money here when it comes to research funding kind of stuff. Because the reality is for us, if there's a call out in the UK, 120 universities, everybody is applying, and most of them are brighter than me. How am I going to get it? But over here, when the funding comes in and it's marked developing country, and normally they will stick with, and Ghana is always on there because in terms of democracy, and so we are a very stable place. So Ghana is always in there. And think about it, those funding, maximum you have 2 applications, one from Legon, one from Technical University, nobody will apply. Then in the end, they will get the money or something. Yeah. Meanwhile, there are a lot of technical stuff that people can do here. So when you put in an application which is ring fenced normally from here, you are more like the success rate at our end, success rate for funding application like 2%. Whereas here, I can bet you will be on about 40%. Very likely that people will not apply, or when people do the competition, you got very few people you are competing with. So that is something we really, really have to. When you see any money, just apply. And not confusing the money to buy pickups. There's a lot out there, but so yes, and please let's have conversations. We've got colleagues. That is what we're going to do. We've got lots of colleagues who are keen from other departments as well that we would definitely want to link them up to colleagues here. Because Kenny now has to see a Daniel here. Wow.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the presentations. I'm not a researcher, but when you said at the end of the presentation, you expect them, those who have not even get involved in research and publication will get involved. And I think I'm going to be one of those people in this area of practice. My background is a social worker, but currently the liaison officer for the university. And I really like the way you push your thing like that. So it really kept me active. And also from my reflection on your personality and then your involvement in your work is a passion that you have in communicating to all at various levels. What I just want to find out or recommend is that, there's been a lot of research work and what you and your colleagues have been doing and our colleagues here as well, but the end result is, what do we use this resource? What do we use this research for? You made mention of various work that has been made on migrants and then this micro sectorial thing that you've been doing. What about the end product, the end service user? How do we communicate this message globally or in the African Ghanaian context so that people will learn and reflect, industries will pick and then use it? Because we have all these database there. You only see it a flash maybe along the VBC where they just talk about it, even in Ghana here, but the impacts of the research work in our society, in our environment is another gap in practice that we need to look into. And then again, if we look at our students, the young graduates that we are training currently, how do we empower them in this kind of research areas as well? And being technical universities, and I think for your level of knowledge and experience, how best can this be picked at your level to empower our young graduates in this area of practice? For instance, you made mention of the young man that is doing, or is it a doctor or a professor, doing so much work in various areas of research and publication because of his experience and how he soaked everything into this kind of areas. So I think we need to take this kind of experience and knowledge that you have shared with further so that at the end of it all, it can bring a general development to our country, Ghana. Thank you.
And you are done. You just publish that, I don't care. And somebody will say, well, professors theorize and engineers engineer, mathematicians do mathematics. And when we do our work, we are done. Then in the last 5 years, everything has been turned upside down. The case of relevance and of course the research assessment, research excellence framework in the UK. So every 5 years, we pull all our research together, the UK universities, and they rate them. And based on that, that is what we give as our fund and everything. And in the past, it was just the papers. And now what they've done is the ranking has got 60% for the research, then you've got 25% for impact. So every university, you have to come up with an impact case study. So it's not just the papers, you have to show how your research has impacted society, both locally and internationally. And most of the time, people are getting their case studies from different places. And most of these funding applications now, nobody will give you money to go and sit in your bedroom and theorize anymore. They want to see a lot of impacts, what the work is actually advocating for, how it will influence policy, and so on and so forth. So our call for we going into funding applications and stuff is very much related to the issue of practice, where we put things into practice. And the best we can do in the end is also to think about our own careers, which is through publications and stuff. So we will have to continue publishing, but those kind of documents and influencing government policy is very important. And for me, for now, we need to make these impact cases, which we are keen on. And in particular, in this particular place, it's much more important. And coming up with impact can be very complicated. especially if you want to write the funding application alone. That is why they call for interdisciplinary teams these days. So for a funding application, especially anything over 500,000 to be successful, see some chemical engineers in there. There's some lab technicians in there, some accountants in there, everybody, activity, different people, entrepreneurship and so on, so that people can come up with impact on different. So impact is very important, and we cannot undermine that. We cannot probably not going to get any money at all. In the case of research, look, the technical universities, we have to accept it. We have a problem. But at the same time, that problem is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because the technical universities do not have those kind of legacies, which might have massive impact on their direction of travel. If you think about Tech Legon, because their history is such a baggage, so Legon guys, if they want to get anything done, even a funding application to be signed off, you have to go to your head of department, get a sign off. It has to go to the college. Yeah, from the college, you go to the provost. It's so complicated. You got hundreds of people in the same department competing for little money. So it becomes backbiting. Everybody wants to get promoted. Everybody wants papers. They are fighting all over the place. There are 20 professors already in there. You want to be a professor. How do you become a professor? Because someone has to die before someone is being replaced. So they go, and their history is massive. Whereas with the technical universities, there is no history at all. You don't have the burden of history. You're starting from the scratch. That is why it provides opportunities for you to do anything at all. So tomorrow morning, Kate STU can decide that, look, we want to be known, or we want to develop the best business school in the country. We want to be known as having one of the center of excellence for business and management. We'll have all these research centers, or in chemical engineering, or in laboratory sciences. And this is our center of excellence. This is what you do not have any legacy. You cannot do that at Legon. If you go to tech, my friend is the dean at the business school, and he started this Carissa Center. And when they tell you some of the stories, the pushbacks, it can be very, very difficult. Whereas over here, we're starting from the scratch. It will be difficult. There's not a lot of opportunities around, in that you also don't have the history, which is also problematic. If you're applying for a funding application, people want to see what you've done already. They want to look at your research publications as well, because I want to give my money to someone who is more likely. It's like in the UK, there will be massive money advertised, 3 million, and they will tell you only Oxford, Cambridge, and maybe UCL can apply. It's been read first. It's not that, well, because they think that they can deliver. If somebody applies for funding from a post-92 university, you are much wary of giving the money to the person, because those universities, their core mission is to teach. Yeah, much of their focus is on teaching, not research. And the polytechnics are very much the same here. The emphasis is more on teaching. So somebody is giving you that money. He thinks you wouldn't even have time to do the research. You don't have that history behind you, those credentials and other stuff behind you. So again, it becomes a problem. But we will have to keep pushing, and you will have to work in groups. And it doesn't always have to be KTU alone. There are so many people out there who want to work with people here. But like I said yesterday, we click on your web page and it goes blank. And I click on your web page and there's a photograph, somebody with a red background, like a passport photo, 1940 passport photo, red background there, and head of department. And you look at the web pages, sometimes it's not, School of Management, you go there and say the aim and objective of the department is train middle level manpower, whatever, the first semester courses, come on. Second semester courses, it's not exciting. Just go and copy. Go and look at Newcastle, Bristol, Kent, wherever. Nobody puts their subjects first semester, whatever, on their web page. And people want to have access to the academics. Everybody's photo has to be there. If I click on it, I should see your research profile. You don't have to put predatory journals there. You have to ban them. It's better to have a blank page where there are no papers than to put a predatory journal there. If somebody's done industry experience of 15 years, that is what we need in a polytechnic, and he's teaching, he doesn't need any papers there. You did your PhD 2 years ago. If you've not published, it doesn't matter. Or if you don't have anything, sometimes people are looking at the institution you went to, they think you'll be good enough. But if you have predatory journals, it's problematic. Or if I can't see your research interests or something, who do you contact? So those are some of the little things we also have to do. Sometimes it's really problematic, isn't it? You just need somebody to add to a project because you need somebody from Ghana. And I don't want to go to Legon, yeah, or you don't want to go to Tech. And you're looking around and you can't find anybody. But you click on Bolega Pole, dead. Tamale Pole, super dead. No. You click anywhere, you can't. Accra Pole, near school. You click, you can't find anybody. So those are the little stuff. I think most of you are aware, isn't it? The UK universities, the American universities, you go to some of them, it's one building like this. But when you go to the web page, over 15,000, over connect classroom say now. It's just because we are selling. Branding, those are the bits that we will also have to do. Other than that, it becomes very difficult. If you put in a funding application and the funders want to check on your background, they come in and they can't find anything. It becomes very difficult. So hopefully this is a starting point. I'm pretty glad you've got a vice chancellor who is. We've been having conversation. We come in here. It's an opportunity for us to also engage with you, and we've taken advantage of this to come in here because we are keen. Whatever we're doing, we want to do it pro bono. We want to meet people, and like I said earlier on, there's a lot that we could give back and also get from you. Yeah, BB free. Yeah, see, BB. To be business and what announce what's the name of paper? This paper be a my breast. Now the abana. I also add something, and by the time I know some editor, okay, we look at it and we publish it together. You get a paper, I get a paper. That's what we do. So hopefully there should be opportunities ahead, and I'm sure in as much as you've got commitment from the top, I think we can do something. And I'm sure you KSI actually you will have a lot of. I'll be asking what's his name, Eric. You will have a lot of alumni out there. HND for no, because we never had any hopes here because school down. We took advantage. I know at least 5 of them who have PhDs, some from Cape Coast Poly, and there are so many of them, and I'm sure there will be lots more from Kumasi here out there in different countries and stuff that we could tap into as VLs and stuff. And but we appreciate the kind of work you are doing in here as well. It's very tough. We all know we know what you're doing. So that is it really. Going forward, Joseph. Who's getting Dean. Dean for no. Yeah.
Maybe because of it.
Yeah.
The creative be an area locally. I see that funding opportunities in the area seem to be challenged. I don't know whether it is same outside there. So when it comes to even opportunities for further research, funding opportunities and all those things, I want to know what the challenges are there, which we could also learn from so that we could improve our situation. Yeah, you could creating no, I'm talking about visual, creating fashion, textiles, design, and that area. That's area. That's what I'm referring to. And also, even when it comes to publication in those areas and those things, because previously we had focused on exhibitions, but it's now the direction is that whether you're doing an exhibition or that, you should also write and also publish. But the funding opportunities and generally in that area seem to be a challenge. Locally here, I want you to address us on the experiences out there and how we can also navigate our way through. Thank you.
By the UN, IMF, World Bank, Offered by these organizations, if you're based in the UK, you can't apply, and they need the PI, which is based now. So sometimes I can see some of the opportunity, or sometimes they get sent to me, but I often don't have anybody on the ground.
Because of my camera and that's okay. Because he's taking on the camera. No, he's taking on.
And sometimes they have like small grant initiative that you can apply for to do a small project in Ghana. And in most cases, often I can join as the 4I, but not as the PR, because many of those organizations insist that the principal investigator has to be based in an African country. So I think if you look at those organizations, you might be able to identify a number of opportunities to apply.
The starting point actually is to combine. The problem is if you stay within the purity of the creative arts sculpture and those kind of stuff, it will be sometimes very difficult to get some money. If you could work with people in, let's say, law. Recently, we wanted to do some work on intellectual assets. And what we wanted to do, we were thinking of this Instagram and stuff, online, the new technologies where people do videos and arts and all those kind of stuff on. There's been instances where people do a dance or something, they put it on Instagram, or they have a product, they show it on Instagram, and somebody the next day in China is producing it. Yeah, because they copy what you've done, and you may not have the intellectual rights. So you got people profiting from innovation that they have not actually developed it. And in this digital era, how do we stop people from stealing people's ideas or people not profiting from their innovations? And we're thinking about the digital age, people putting stuff on there. And in the end, when we met, we had to go and see some law guys to come and help us think through some of the ideas. And later on, we realized our idea was a bit flawed, because when you dance or something, you can't put a copyright on the dance move and all those kind of stuff when other people were. And in the end, they asked us to talk to the AHRC. So there's this funding body, they call them Humanities Research Council. Yeah, Humanities Research Council, to see how we could, but it was more about the technology of it and how we could profit from it, even though we're talking about creative arts, what people are putting out there. So there will have to be a bit of thinking, as in think of the artwork being stolen by the West from Nigeria and all those stuff that people are now campaigning to get the arts back. Is there a way to get people from how do you call it, to get some of this arts which has been locked up in museums and other places back? Are there any possibilities, or what are the potentialities, the way people are thinking of this arts which has been kept there? Because the argument is it's better being kept in the West because we can look after it very well. When we bring them back, we all know our museums, people, the next day it will all be gone. But the issue too is, yes, somebody's gotten his art, he's done his art, and you're telling me you can look after it. It doesn't make sense. It's not yours. How can you look after it? So you have to bring it back. And there's massive debate, and some of this stuff, sometimes you could veer into them and try to understand the public opinion or whatever, how people over here, not in the diaspora, because the diasporans have been very militant, fighting, to get some of these artifacts back. What is the value of these artifacts on their return to the continent, to our museums and so on, which you could do, but there has to be some cross-disciplinary thinking. If you go it alone, it will be very difficult. Very, very difficult.
And just to add, maybe you might reach out to me and then sometimes I might say no. For our institutions, for me to lead a funding project, our universities, it has to be a large amount. So if it's a small amount, then it's better if you're based in Ghana, you lead the project,
Mm.
and then I will have to support you in developing the process. So just in case somebody reached.
And it's very much related to the idea of rejection, which we said you have to go for. Sometimes you go for some idea, it's madness. You read it yourself, you realize this is, bonkers. You really don't know what you are writing until you finish writing the whole project out. You tighten it up a bit and you live it. By the time you realize that is where you get the money from. And you have to be in to win it. If you don't put in the application, no idea can be as clean, thorough, and perfect as we've always been envisaging, like doing a PhD, thinking that a PhD will be perfect. No idea. So if you get any idea at all and you think through a bit and you think it makes a bit of sense, just put it in. The Humanities and Research Council have a look at. And I think it's time also to talk to people in other faculties, not in Ghana, who are involved in the visual arts, those that you've read their work, which is exciting, which crosses what the stuff you're doing. Sometimes just drop the person an email. People want to speak to people, but they don't know how to do it. If you see any academic, maybe in the States or whatever, in the UK, you look at his funding record and he's done very well in the visual arts. You can just send him an email. Hey, I'm very much interested in the kind of stuff you're doing. Is there any projects that we could do together? Do you know of any funding sources and stuff? And some of the community funding and stuff, if you are not in that specific area, you wouldn't get to know anything about them. So those speculative emails sometimes can help. Just drop them in. There will not be any other session because this is it. So it's good we're having this conversation. So this is the way forward. So what is the way forward? We're going forward. To what extent, what can we do to help? And it shouldn't be one way. What can we also get from you? Yeah, Mrs. Tosi, so we also want stuff from you. The problem is this Ghanaians are very, very bright. I met this academic from Hall University. I went to examine a PhD with him. So, where are you from? I said, I'm from Ghana. Oh, I thought you were Nigerian. Oh, I said, no, I'm not. I said, well, Ghanaians are very, very bright, isn't it? Every Ghanaian that comes to my university will finish their degree. Every Nigerian, they will struggle to finish. The problem is none of the Ghanaians can pay their fees. Everybody is waiting for the father to bring the fees. And by the time they finish, they've not paid the kobo. The Nigerian will pay everything on day one. Ghanaians are very poor, David. You have to be a Nigerian. Yeah. So most of the time, the Ghanaians will finish, but we never have money. So the issue is people are very bright here. People do stuff, but we are too shy, isn't it? We don't come out. It's happening to all of us. We go to interviews. I've been to some professorial interviews that have been 10 now. And in the feedback, they told me, you are not very proactive. You're very Nigerian. Oh, no, Bruni, no, I will do this, I will do. And we are very measured. So you kind of sit back a bit and they think you are not radical, you are not coming up with ideas. But it's time we have to move a bit. So people have stuff. And you just have to keep writing. Let them reject you. I had a rejection yesterday. Who cares? Yeah, let them reject you. You just have to keep writing and speak to people. And people are keen to work with Ghanaians in particular. But most of the time, I had a research environment. That's not about university. You teach about 7-6 hours a day. You finish at 4 o'clock. You sit in the JCR a bit, drink some beer. By the time you leave 6 o'clock, you can't do anything. It's a huge problem, isn't it? Yeah, it's a huge problem. And that's what Joseph was saying. It could be just 2 hours every day. Little, 2 hours. And Yeah, easy, kakra. Maybe I'm catching the PhD students. Oh, show them, I don't see how you design. Oh, show them, you are in the hall, maybe steady. You turn like this, the kitchen is here. You turn like the door, the postman can, you take your mail, you come and sit down. You do the work, open coffee, you just go to the kitchen, get some coffee. The internet is on 24/7. It's a human right. You know, you use it and you're doing your work, you have access to everything. The next 4 minutes, you want some food, you just go to the kitchen, you eat. So you have all the time, you can stay indoors and do a lot of work. Whereas here, you start working every 2 minutes. Your friend there 20 times. Yeah, then people will be calling you. You can't do anything. So it's a bit difficult. When you really want to do this, it has to be something you really love to do. You have to be committed to it. And that's why I've also been advocating, said there should be a new pathway for those who want to do just the teaching. You have to leave them alone to do their teaching. Yes. Now we have our teaching fellows, people who you don't worry them with research. They have industry experience. They also do their stuff, they teach. And those so that we can channel the research money elsewhere, because it requires a lot of commitment. And you think of it, to profit from your papers, you need about 5, 6, 7. And if each of them is coming out in 2 years, then by the time you start profiting, you would have retired. So people are not really, it's very, so if you commit, then you have to spare some 2 hours, and you can never compete with those of us up there, because we have everything. Matthew chapter 20. Yeah, we have everything. Everything is there. So yeah, what one said then crowd with me. Now I had it can be very tough, but if you commit, and also the interesting, when you become successful here, your colleague over tech, Nathaniel, he's gotten now about £7 million. Over England, and we move 50,000 cry. We'll be a farmer. But because of those ring fence money in any other no. Who apply or will be also apply or don't apply near their man. So we just need to do something. We just have to apply. Who funding application? But I do who funding application. The nothing say you and I send me an email. I'll find you somebody. You just put in something. You never know. You get the money, and it could be the life-changing bits. 2, 3 papers come out of it, and it becomes a springboard, and others just spin out.
Just to add to that, I think all these circumstances constrains actually everyone's ability to be successful. But my view is that it also presents opportunity. Because sometimes we have made some projects, sometimes we have like additional data, sometimes they put 2 or 3 interviews, and I cannot put down here to do it. So in the past, I've always used some people at the University of Ghana. Say, okay, you go and do 4 or 5 interviews with these type of people, I already have it, and I will include you take this together. And sometimes I give the project to people and they don't do it. And so you also need people on the ground that if you say this needs to be done by 2 weeks' time, you have to adhere to that. Then if you don't adhere to that, next time I'm not going to have to collaborate, I'm going to go with somebody else. So I think that is one side that maybe really helps a lot more.
I'll show you something this morning. I'm a assistant Journal of Strategy and Management, and there's a paper that was sent to me by Ahmed Japan. I've invited more than 40 people. Nobody's accepting to review. Then I asked him to get me some Ghanaians. He actually got me somebody from this institution. I sent him the invitation. Up to date, he didn't even accept to review it. He can't do it. So I think we can do better. This is the beginning of good tidings. I'm really glad I'm here. Joseph is here. I'm pretty sure in the coming years, we will get lots of people to come in. And I will also encourage, especially those of you in the business school, if you could register with the British Academy of Management, at least we control it a bit for now. And there are lots of opportunities. at the BAM for you to come for the conferences. Normally the conferences are very easy to come in. And I know money is very difficult to find here, but if you can come in for once, one conference paper, come in, then you may come in there to meet somebody you could work with. And the person might open some other doors for you. So if you could register with the British Academy of Management and stuff, that would be great. Joe. Yeah, Paul, yeah, another one.
Yeah, waiting for here a minute. He'll be here in a minute, yes. And he's here. Thank you for coming. We are done with all the sessions and we want to take a word.
Thank you very much. Directions, what you have done. Let's see, I have to say something before we close, that's in order. Let me begin by expressing gratitude to those of you who make time today and yesterday to be part of this program. When I had a chance to say a word yesterday, and we said something to the effect that we have set a vision for ourselves, become a world-class institution, and we need to do the things that we have to do to become a world-class institution. And engage people that exposure is one way we can do this. Unfortunately, because of my many engagements, I couldn't be here most of yesterday and probably not at all, or today to listen. But the feedback I've gotten has been very impressive. The check-out itself is a testimony to that. Okay, so we are on track. My prayer is that we wouldn't only have something to listen to the Tuesdays, but we are very present here. I think we could start the necessary acquaintance, especially those of you in the area of expertise. Get your business card, so that we'll link up with them within last year long, so that we can continue with the event long after the event. So I want to say thank you for making time to be here. Prof and Prof, I don't know how to express my gratitude to you to travel all the way from England to be here to do this for us. Earlier on, we were having this chat about how we can build up this relationship for each other, particularly so that we can continue to learn of the experiences you guys have. I think we were both already having some discussion with some of the corporate leadership to do that. So we thank you very much. We will continue to make that with you. But as you travel back to England, we wish you God's guidance and His protection. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for, on behalf of the Human Resources as well, I say thank you to every participant, for those who began with us 3 years of digging and serving today. I know that you've been impacted on the prayer was this morning. Thank you for coming. Please, the lunch will be shared later. So kindly wait just a few minutes and the lunch is shared. Thank you.
think it's important I say this, okay, because Prof. Sakho and what most of you may not know is that they did all this problem. Well, take it up down in Martin. So they're Ghanaians. This country trained there, and then they went abroad and they say, we'll come back. So I guess this is their way of saying that even if we won't come back, this is how much we can also contribute to the building of the nation. So it is their way of giving back to this country. So, Prof. Yedamasipi,
Thank you. Thank you for, we will call Reverend Princeton to give us the closing prayer.
Please, let's share a word of prayer while we close. We are most grateful to you, our Lord and Heavenly Father. We thank you for these 2 days where we have met together to build our capacities in research, in publications, and funding. We ask for your blessings for Professor Sakho and Professor Amwam, who flew all the way from the UK to be with us. We pray that every energies they have expended, replenish. When they are going, take them back also safely and continue to be a blessing to them. We pray that the knowledge that we have gained will put it into practice for the benefit of the university and our own lives. Continue to be with us even when we leave you. We thank you for all that you have done for us, and we continue to say hallelujah to your name. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, have we prayed with thanksgiving, and we all say amen. God bless you.
Come on,